Thanks very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Town of Basalt Town Council meeting for October 26, 2021. This is our regular council meeting. We will begin our evening with a roll call. Pam, please call the roll, see who's all here.
Thank you. Let's begin with Elise Huddle.
Present.
Thank you, Elise. Bill Kane.
Here.
Thank you, Bill. Gary Tenenbaum.
Here.
Thank you, Bill Infante.
Here.
Thank you, Bill. Glenn Drummond.
Here.
Thank you, David Knight.
Here.
Thank you. And Ryan Slack is on his way, I believe. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. First order of business is to review and approve the consent agenda. We have two items on consent tonight. First is minutes from October 12, 2021, and a second is a request to continue public hearing for a liquor license application for a new restaurant, which will be called Bull and Buck, and will be located at 305 Rivers Court, which is basically where the old free-range kitchen was located. So Bull and Buck sounds like my kind of place, though. That sounds like a good deal. But anyway, that's the second item. So I'd entertain a motion to approve consent agenda for those two items.
Mayor, I move that town council approve the consent agenda items as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you. Consent agenda is approved. The next order of business is a call to public. Chris Lentz is here, so I'm sure there's going to be some interest in and Jerry Terwilliger, who looks like he's going to talk. With that, let me just remind everyone what the ground rules are for public comment. So I will read verbatim here from our notes. Please limit comments to 3 minutes and address your comments directly to the mayor. Identify yourself by name and address when making comments. Comments should be courteous, civil, and constructive. Town council will make no decision or take action except as to direct the town manager. Now, the way this is going to work is I'm the gatekeeper here, so I'll give you plenty of time to get up to the podium, get all set, and then the clock will start. And when you hit your 3 minutes, my hand's going to go up. It's going to be like in the NHL when the ref puts his hand up, you know, basically the clock stops. So then the duck comes down and you have to sit down. So that's our ground rule. So with that, I would ask if there's anyone interested in addressing town council tonight.
And Mayor, if I could just add my standard spiel that if you're watching on Grassroots, another way, if you're not already in our waiting room, is to hit the Zoom link, which is the first page of the agenda packet that can be found on the Agenda Center. Or you can call in at 1-346-248-7799, and the webinar ID number is 860-7194-3821. And if you have trouble and you still want to make a comment, you could text 970-379-1514, and that information is up on the screen on Grassroots. And I do think that we have also, after we take the public comment here, I do think we have public that are waiting in the Zoom waiting room.
Okay,
too.
very good. All right, we'll take those. So let's start with folks that are actually in attendance. So if you care to address council, please come on up to the council and tell us name, address, serial number, rank.
Good evening. I am Jerry Terwilliger. I live at 216 East Homestead Drive, and I'm here to request that the town install some more speed bumps on Homestead Drive. I had to write all these notes because I can't ever remember anything anymore. Some were installed years ago on West Homestead at the request of Karen Teague. And the speed bumps are needed on East Homestead Drive also. Traffic has increased a lot on Homestead Drive. There's obviously two reasons. One is because a lot of the streets are closed because of all the construction that's going on. But the other one is probably because of the increase in population. And now that people are discovering Homestead Drive, as they're using it a lot, Most people exceed the speed limit when they go down Homestead Drive. You can ask Chief Knott to verify that. Some people really exceed the speed limits. You'll see them come around the corner from Midland Avenue, pedal to the metal. Now, one of the reasons we do need speed bumps there is because a lot of people also walk on Homestead Drive. They'll take their walk, their afternoon walk, they'll push their baby carriages down there. And the sidewalk on Homestead Drive is quite narrow, so you see them in the streets all the time. So it's not a safe thing if people are speeding down Homestead Drive.
Yeah.
Speed bumps should mitigate this. Now, I'm just going to give you one heads up. They just re-tarred Homestead Drive. But the other thing is the infrastructure on Homestead Drive is probably as old as the infrastructure on Midland Avenue. I've lived on Homestead Drive for 40 years, and they've never excavated it to replace water lines, sewer lines, any other kind of lines that might be there. So I thank you for your time, and I hope that we will have some speed bumps on Homestead Drive, East Homestead Drive.
Naturally, our town manager will follow up with you and let you know what,
All right.
I'm sure our public works guys will take it up, and Susan and
All right.
Ryan, so.
Well, thank you for
Appreciate the
listening to me
comments,
tonight.
Jerry. Okay, thank you. Next, come on up, Chris.
Hello, my name is Chris Lentz, 75 River Oaks Lane, which is near Valley Lumber for a little reference point. I'd like to give you these photographs if I can. Just clear this with them, please pass them around. What you'll be looking at are photos of some of the infractions to the riparian area in my neighborhood that I'm concerned about. I'll wait till you have the pictures. These pictures are pretty much a representation of some of the things that my neighbors think are appropriate for a conservation easement in a wildlife habitat zone. The Town of Basalt's environmentally sensitive area regulations specifically excludes all of these activities. I'd like to read you a letter that was sent to our homeowners association on May 10th, 2010, and the title of the letter is Compliance with Environmentally Sensitive Area Regulations. Evidence of some recent development along the riverfront within the town's environmentally sensitive area has been brought to the attention of the town planning staff. Said evidence suggests removal of native vegetation and introduction of non-native man-made improvements to the riparian area. The town and Eagle County recognize the importance of the native riparian area as quality habitat for valuable wildlife and plant species native to the area and as a natural flood control. Town staff is concerned with the degradation of riparian areas. River Oaks subdivision has been subject to the town's ESA regulations since it was annexed into the town of Basalt. The town has the responsibility to enforce the regulations in this area and within individual properties. Town staff encourages a non-adversarial collaborative solution for the protection of the environmentally sensitive river's edge. Town staff would like the opportunity to meet with the HOA board or a subcommittee to discuss the regulations and develop a rehabilitation and preservation plan for the riparian zone. Please contact James Lent at the town hall. This letter was signed by Mr. Kane, who was then the town manager. Okay, the response to
Previous geologic
this
era, that was
to this
was
complaint.
the last stage of glacial.
Excuse me?
No, go ahead.
I'm deaf, I'm sorry.
Okay.
So James Lent and Rick LaFaro came down, had a meeting with us, came back a while later.
We're at 3 minutes, Chris, but why don't you wrap up? Go ahead.
Well, he gave us some time as we passed around the pictures,
Okay, that's,
like 30 seconds.
go ahead.
I'll make it quick. Okay, the response was, Mr. Lent stressed that their purpose was to recommend, not require, that the HOA respect retention of riparian and native vegetation areas and to recommend re-vegetation in the areas where the bank is eroded or otherwise unstable. So recommending and not requiring really isn't an enforcement in my department or in my mind. This time around, this is 11 years ago, and I know justice turns slowly, I'm hoping for a much more complete job. I'd like to give all of you a copy of this letter, and I'll see you in 2 weeks.
Okay, thank you. You know, the only comment I would make to you is that, you know, for the council to do something, there has to be a specific ask. There has to be an agenda topic for us, you know, so the staff, I'm not going to get into a dialogue with you here. I'm just telling you that if you want to pursue this, you're going to have to pursue it with the staff. We'll sit here and patiently listen to what the heck you say, but we can't engage with you in this forum. This is not the correct forum to resolve the grievance that you have, Chris, so.
I understand. I've tried that avenue, and that's why I'm here now.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, if I may,
Yeah, go
I
ahead,
think it's
Ryan.
appropriate just for the council, since you haven't had feedback from staff at this point, that, you know, James and I have met with Mr. Lentz on 3 separate occasions. As you can see, this issue dates back a number of years, and highlighted in the letter that was just read to you is coming up with a non-adversarial and collaborative approach. And that's the same approach that James and I have come to Mr. Lentz with, and the neighbors who are pictured here. You know, these patios have been here for a really long time, dating back to the point in time that this first letter was written. And so, you know, we've made those suggestions. The neighbors are reticent at this point to go anywhere with it unless they kind of come to an agreement with Mr. Lentz on it. And so we're at a bit of a stalemate, I would describe it as. So it is something that staff's been working on, and we think there's a really reasonable solution. We've been out there with Rick LaFaro, who also is in agreement with you know, our approach. So until somebody, you know, comes off
we're not
of
gonna
home
get into
base,
this.
I
Yeah.
think it's going to be important that you know, we get that collaboration on both sides. So
All right, thank you.
that's where we are with it.
All right, thanks, Chris. So anyone else in the audience care to address council tonight? Come on up. If not, then we have some Zoom attendees that might, in our hybrid system, might want to address council. Is that
Yes.
Case.
Dave had his hand up, but he's taken it down. Dave, are you still interested in, well, Colleen is, and so's Dave, so let's, Dave had his hand up first. Take
Not to
Dave.
talk about the self-centered circle?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you should be talking at the public hearing.
So, Dave, can you hear us okay here?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, just fine. We just want to remind you that we entertain comments at town council for items that are did not deal with matters that are already scheduled for regular council action later on in the meeting. So I know you addressed council before about our proposed grocery store and apartment complex at Basalt Circle. If they are your comments, I'd suggest you hold them until we take public comment during that item, which is later on in the agenda. You're certainly welcome to address council right now, but we use this time to hear from citizens about topics that are not on the agenda.
Thank you. That was really my question. So I'll wait till later in the evening then.
Very good. Okay.
Collins?
Colleen, if you're there, you have the floor, and you have 3 minutes.
Yeah. Hi, Council. This is Colleen Collins. I am at Willits Bend 35 Widget Street. I am here tonight because we have some access issues that are not being addressed that I'd like to see if we could get some help on. We have accessed for 13 years across some property that has been shared by both Shelton Drilling and Umbrella Roofing, and I know Basalt Public Works has purchased Shelton's. Unfortunately, right now, it looks like we're going to be fenced out to be able to access the original and Valley View bus, the parks, Whole Foods, the whole interior connective corridor for people who are over at Willits Bend. And as you know, we're probably going to grow quite a bit here shortly. I'm aware that there are phases to this, and that was explained to me. I do want to also, for the record, state that we were not public noticed. There were only 2 parties that were public noticed out of 36 people that are owners. They happen to be the developer and the buyer of the undeveloped land closest to what is now going to be Basalt Public Works. So everyone 10 feet north was not. So we did not go to public comment. It was unfortunate that that happened that way, but that is the way it is. I'm trying to address it with you all, with staff, and with engineering, the entities that be, because it's a really important corridor. We're being shut off, basically lapped off. I know planning has mentioned, but they haven't disclosed what they are looking at doing to help make a connection from Willits Bend to the rest of Willits. I don't know what that is. I know there was talk of there being a trail through the backwoods, which is existing now. I am saying emphatically, and I sent a letter to you all, it's not safe at night. It's not a winter trail. We need access. And the original Valley View bus is 1/3 the distance from Willits than the Two Rivers Road bus. The Two Rivers Road bus, there's nobody there. There's no community other than the hillside. We have TAC Fitness Center, we have the medical center, we have 4 or 5 neighborhoods. We all need to be able to use that original bus stop. The parks are that direction. I said that. Okay, I'm just trying to be succinct. And I think that there's a confusion taking place because it's Eagle County or Basalt. We are Eagle County. So the buck is sort of being passed back and forth. I would love to see you all have a discussion and put it on the agenda to either get us annexed in or to find a way to work with Eagle County so that we are cohesive, that the connective corridors make sense. We are platted right now to have a road through Willits, but I know that's in a later phase perhaps.
Colleen, you've exhausted your time, so please wrap up as soon as you can.
Okay, so I just think that bike walking, that is an important part. We're locked off right now, and we need to have some access. We've had access, it's being closed. I'd like to see it be put on the agenda. We need to find some solutions.
Great, well, thank you. And I know the staff's working on this, so Ryan, do you want to make any comment?
I did just want to make sure, for the record, it was noted that the public notice was done properly and in accord with our code. And so that was done. And then staff is in fact and has been working on pedestrian access, which is why in part for this first phase we've added sidewalk on the west side of our property. Now the rub comes the fact that the existing trail, which is just a foot trail through a dirt lot, crosses private property, and that's the Willits Bend property. The one that was described that goes through the woods is also private property, and that's an adjacent HOA. So the town, what we're proposing is, yeah, we're happy to provide access to one of those private properties, but ultimately the private property owners, we'll need to work it out with them to be able to get that access. That's not something that the town has in our control. So
one of them is Willits Bend.
One of them is Willits Bend, where Colleen lives. And so if that HOA is interested in having a discussion on formalizing a trail through there for the public, then, I think that's
Okay, well, we'll have to
something
schedule
we're
this
open
for.
to.
Could we do that, please?
Colleen, we're
Because I
not,
would
this is
love
not
to
a,
see
this is not
some
a debate
solutions.
tonight. Your comment period is over, so we're gonna close out this topic and move on. So thank you for your comments.
I don't think I'm debating. I'm asking for a meeting. I'm asking, just like you asked the other gentleman, to put it on the agenda. I want a meeting, and I want to see something happen where there's discussion further on this.
Okay.
Thank you.
Your request has been duly noted. Thanks.
Thank
So,
you.
Any other public comment that we have?
There's another Dave. Is that the same Dave?
I don't know, we can certainly ask. Is this, okay, Colleen's gone. Is
Dave,
this
it's
the same
not-
Dave? Dave Hotchkin, are you on
It's
here
not
twice,
Wendy's,
perchance?
Dave, is it? Not Wendy's.
I worked for him once.
I'm not getting a hand up for this second Dave, so.
Okay, so,
And you might just, there are quite a few people came in after we made our announcement. You might just double check that no one's here for public comment.
okay, thank you. I think that concludes public comment for tonight. So with that, we will turn to our next order of business, which is mayor and council reports. So, anyone council like to provide any updates? Go ahead, Elise.
So since we last met, I had the pleasure of attending all three of my committee meetings. So we had a core board meeting, Community Office for Resource Efficiency, a Climate Action Collaborative Eagle County meeting, and the fall retreat for Colorado Communities for Climate Action. So I just wanted to let you guys know that, so I'll work backwards. So CC4CA has set their 3 to 5 year policy agenda at this meeting and was ratified. So I will share that, or I'll ask maybe Sarah can share it with everybody. The Climate Action Collaborative, the Eagle County group, this was my first time meeting with them. And this was interesting because I think we're still gonna kind of have some struggles with us being on the other side of the hill in terms of the things that they want to do, and some of them didn't necessarily match up with our needs, so that'll be a bit of a negotiation there. And then finally, I just wanted to let you know that the core board has hired a interim executive director. His name is John Doherty, and he will be in place for approximately 6 months, helping us to define what the next executive director job position should look like, as well as sort of maybe redefine the structure of CORE itself a little bit. CORE, I don't know, for anybody that doesn't know the history, was born out of the Renewable Energy Mitigation Program of Aspen and Pickens County. And they are so successful that they are collecting fewer and fewer funds, which means CORE has less money coming in from that funding source. So we're looking at other ways to fund CORE and what services that might look like. So all of the basic things that CORE's always offered will remain the same, but perhaps some peripherals will change a little bit.
Great.
So.
Well, thanks for the update.
And then one more thing. All of you received an email from Pam with a letter about the Antiquities Act from the Mountain Pact, and asking us if we would be interested in signing on. I don't know if anybody had a chance to look at that, but it's basically, I think it's a great thing. It's just a thank you letter and sort of an urge to action to support the Antiquities Act, using it towards saving more important lands. The Bears Ears Monument is among those that are being preserved. And if you haven't had a chance to read the letter, it just kind of touches on the economic and climate change reasons for supporting it. So I would love to see us all sign on as a council.
Great. Well, thanks. I mean, just
Mr. Mayor,
go ahead.
As part of that, I think I would, if you all agree to sign on to that, I think I could just I could just respond and let her know. Is it Anna?
Anna, yeah.
Know that everybody is in agreement, and just pass on the names of the council members.
I already sent it.
Oh, you did? Oh, okay. All right.
So,
in
if we
favor?
want to pursue this, do we need to set this for council action?
You
or-
could just
Could we
provide
just-
direction to me
Okay.
if you want.
Do we need a motion on this, Jeff? or-
So the letter, it appeared to have been signed by counselors and commissioners in their individual capacities.
Uh-huh.
And so if you're signing on as collectively as a town council, then there should be some sort of, even just a motion to approve that. But if you all prefer to sign on in your individual capacities, that's certainly an option.
Is everybody up to snuff? Have they read it and digested it and understand it? Or do you want to set it for the next meeting? Is it time of the essence? Do we need to take action on this tonight, or can we do it next meeting?
I already signed it as an individual.
Okay, well, it's,
And I already gave my blessing, and Bill Infante
Same.
gave his blessing, so it's,
but you've done that in an individual capacity?
yeah.
Yeah.
But then we said, we'd love to see the whole council sign on.
So, any druthers?
I'm okay with it.
Yeah,
I mean, I have no issue with it. I would sign on.
I'm okay with it, so,
So
all
if
right, so,
If that's the case, I would
council.
motion that the council approve Elise Hubbard's recommendation that we support the letter as inviting our council support for the steps taken under the Antiquities Act,
Yeah.
and notably the preservation of Bears Ear and other monuments
Yeah.
in the United States.
Second.
Moved and seconded, we'll do this by voice vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay,
Thank you.
all right, thank you.
Respond on your behalf.
So, anyone else like to comment tonight? I would like to update council on a couple significant things that occurred at our last RAFTA meeting. As you know, I represent the town on the RAFTA board, and there was one kind of significant change for this year's budget that will potentially affect transport in Basalt. So, what has happened is that we have combined two zones. So the fare structure for RAFTA is predicated on how many zones you cross and how many zones you travel within. So we've had a significant breakthrough. So Elgibel and Basalt now have been merged into one zone. And we've also modified the fare structure so that if you travel within the same zone, there's zero charge. So there's zero fare.
That is
So now,
fantastic.
starting as of November 22nd, you can ride from Willits to Old Town and back and forth for no charge. So that's a free fare to ride from Willits to either of the two stops, either BRT or our Two Rivers Road station in town. So,
Fantastic. Who do we think?
Excellent, yeah.
Who do we think?
well, we think
How do
we
they
have to.
monitor this? Because I thought that was the big
Yeah.
impediment that they couldn't
This is,
figure
this
out.
is going to be, was my first question.
Oh, okay.
And I think honestly, the answer is, let us worry about that, you know?
Okay.
I think this sounds kind of implausible, but it's really not. The drivers, make contact with folks that are regular travelers on the bus, and so they know. And so certainly there's potential for leakage, and, there'll be an occasional rider that won't get off and ride to Aspen, and the driver will note it, and they'll have a conversation with them about it. But it's, I think it's just really a nice element of the plan. I honestly don't think it changes much about our first and last mile. I think it's the same stations, but for those that need to make that travel and that those stations are convenient, this is a nice, because this was something we were considering doing, with a pretty significant cost center to the town, and now this will be included in the RAFTA budget, so.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. Okay, so there are lots of other stuff, but it's getting too much in the weeds about RAFTA and transit, but, lots of really good news.
Please
and
pass along
positive.
our thank you.
Yeah, I certainly will. Maybe we ought to send a note to Dan and the board thanking him for
Yeah, that'd be
for
great.
the change.
And you can send a get well card to Dan as well.
He's
I hear he has
he's
a-
well. I talked to him
Okay.
today. He's 100%, feels great. So he's back at it. So thanks for that. Any other comments? Okay, so our manager's up.
Thank you, Mayor. So a couple things to follow up on with you. So you and I are going to have to share. Yeah. So this is the downtowner proposal. So we got the proposal back after our last discussion, and I've since spoken with Dan Blankenship as well. And so they are looking at having on their agenda next week, a discussion about the downtowner and funding it for 2022. And what has changed on this one, I believe the price did stay the same. So the total cost for 1 year of service is $379,586. So our share is approximately $190,000 for that, and we would be looking to RAFTA to cost share that equally with us. This does basically put the service in for 8 months of the year. It excludes April, May, October, November, so sort of those shoulder months like we talked about. And during the operational months, service will run sort of at those peak hours of commuting and then into the evening. So 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. and then 3 p.m. to 10 p.m. Daily. And then Saturdays and Sundays would be all day, so 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. The RAFTA, Dan, in my conversation with him, is just looking for, I'd sent this to him, but then looking for a letter requesting the funds for 2022. So, I can draft that this week and get it off to them, and then the RAFTA board can consider it coming up. So our formalization of commitment will be upon budget adoption. So
It's going to be included in the budget?
Yeah.
Okay. So that'll be the formal action?
Yeah.
Okay.
So really from you all, it's an update, but I just wanted to kind of get that general thumbs up that we're moving in the right direction here.
Great.
Okay. And then the second thing I have
It was a
All right.
cross thumb.
Good.
is another, looking for another thumbs up. So as you know, town staff engages with the Child Care Coalition, which is a coalition of folks that represent different interests, private providers for childcare, governments, and some businesses. And one of the topics has been that Parcel 2E in Willits Town Center, and then the Stotts Mill project as well, which is required to build a core and shell equivalent to 4,000 square feet for use as a childcare facility. And so, in working with the Child Care Coalition, there was some back and forth with them, but I think we got to a place where we wanted to try two different things. So in the budget already, we have some money in there for looking at refining the design on the 2E parcel. And what we would like to do with that 2E parcel is put out an RFP, a request for proposals, to providers and to get a provider on board. Part of the rationale for that is that town staff, especially in light of Basalt Forward 2030, are going to be hyper-focused on carrying through with those improvements. And we think that if we're able to get a provider on board, not only would they be able to look for funding opportunities for this project, look for partnerships, but then also help to refine a design that we have today. So we have $25,000 to help with that refinement. So we'd like to move forward on that. And again, that's in the 2022 budget. And then secondly, the Stotts Mill core and shell. So that'll be built coming up in likely 2022. And the developer on that one has an obligation to reach out and look for the provider. So we would kind of be insulated from that task, but nonetheless wanted to put some money in. Once again, $25,000 is what we put in the 2022 budget to just look at the tenant finish in there. So the core and shell is there, but what does this look like? And so we would ultimately work with the Child Care Coalition and then also that provider that's chosen by the developer to start furthering that project. So I think really what the coalition, their main thrust on this is there's been lots and lots of banter, lots of talk over time, and I think some really good support for childcare. But this is kind of taking it to that next level, and something that we think really kind of gets it down the road. Ryan and Gary have been working on that coalition for some time as well. Susan, as well as Catherine and Sarah Nadolny. So we have quite a bit of time invested into it as well. So really what I'm looking for is, are we on the right track with it? Of course, we'd bring back, if you put out an RFP, have to bring back that in some form to the council before we approve a provider in there.
Great news. That's real progress. Comments or direction?
I think it's a great move.
Yeah. Likewise, really encourage you to keep moving. That's a great start.
I've heard about it from the community an awful lot. There are movements afoot at the federal level to better embrace childcare and to provide more support. So we might be ahead of the curve if we have our ducks in a row. Perhaps that will position us for federal funding of some sort.
Absolutely. Good work. Thanks.
Great. And then one final thing, this should be pretty quick. Sorry, I've got lots of stuff tonight. Our council discretionary grants are up again, and let's see, the last year, I think Elise, you sat on that committee, Glenn, and David, and I guess I'd recommend that if you guys,
team, I think.
if you guys are okay with sitting on it again, and nobody else has a burning desire,
nice.
We'll utilize you guys. We'll get together sometime in November. I think it is, like we did last time. So
Good deal.
If everybody's okay with that?
So what's the schedule on that looking like
Well, we make
for the interviews?
we make the
or the grants?
recommendations to council, and then council will bless that, and then after the new year, because this is a 2022 budget item, we would distribute that money to those grantees.
Okay. Yeah, let's get the word out to our nonprofits, let them know.
And it is posted on our website now, and most of those nonprofits know the drill. They're looking for it this time of year, so.
Okay. Very good. All right. Is that it, Mr. Manager?
That is it. Thank you, Mayor.
Well, thanks a lot. That's a lot. So our next order of business will be receive presentations, and item 6A is an update from Jamie Hayes on the youth zone. So, Jamie, if you're here, come on up and have a seat, and make sure you get close to the microphone and let us know what's going on with youth zone.
Hello there. Hi there. I'm Jamie Hayes. I'm the new executive director at Youth Zone as of April, which doesn't seem so new when I say it out loud, but I'm still learning a ton. And speaking of your grant cycle, I just am trying to make the rounds to all city councils and just make sure that we tell you how much we appreciate your support, and every dollar makes what we do up and down the valley from Aspen to Parachute possible. So whatever amount it is, we just want to say thank you, and we're very grateful for the way that you support our work that we do.
Excellent.
I did send a presentation.
Yeah, we received your PowerPoint presentation. It was in our packet.
Great, so it's not going to be presented. I can just talk through what's in there?
Yeah, that'd be fine. Yeah.
Okay, great.
I can't recite the actual pie chart numbers for every one of them, but I
Do you
did
want
see
a
it.
copy of it just for your reference?
Yeah, I would. I wasn't sure if it was going to be presented otherwise.
I wouldn't mind if it was presented.
Oh, that's okay. This works great.
I did not get it to James. I did not communicate to James.
Uh-oh.
It's no
put it up there,
problem.
so it's not-
We work in the human service field, so we just kind of go with it. It's all good. As you know, Youth Zone has been in existence for about 45 years, so we have a solid, strong foundation with our community. People know Youth Zone well for a diversion program within our juvenile justice system with our youth, Aspen to Parachute at the municipal level and at the district court level. So we work with really high-risk youth and families who need a lot of intervention and support when a referral comes in, when something has happened and a youth or a family is in crisis. And then we can provide full wraparound services for many other things that they need, whether that's substance counseling and support, or trauma and mental health support, for lots of other things that have happened in their life, which sometimes leads to behaviors that can be shocking and surprising in our communities. So we believe that a behavior is a communicator, and it does not define the human or the individual, and that's the premise in which we work. We are working really closely with our school and educational partners right now in order to increase our services to youth-facing organizations that can increase referrals and help us catch kids and families when they're in trouble and they're in need of support before it gets to a level where they're engaging with the justice system in any way. We work very closely with our safety resource officers in schools, our school resource officers. Specifically in Basalt, we've worked very closely with Thomas Wright and have had a highly collaborative relationship with the school administration and Thomas in order to be able to engage with families before it gets too far or it gets too difficult for families and for schools. Specifically, we're working in Basalt. We are working on a truancy intervention. And while we know that the Roaring Fork School District, which I worked for many, many years, and I highly support and love, and I'm excited to support them as an external colleague now, they have response systems that are very responsive to our youth who have a hard time going to school for whatever reason. The internal systems within the Roaring Fork School District, I know I've gone way off track here. The internal systems within the Roaring Fork School District are highly effective. And we know that there are youth and families who need even more support. So we're accepting referrals specifically for truancy just in the city of Basalt as a trial. And we'll let you know how that goes at the end of this year. And please reach out to us if you have any more questions about that. It's going very well. So we've increased human resource capital here so that we can be more responsive. And we're working on developing what this referral system looks like specifically for truancy. And although we know truancy is the trigger for the referral, we know that the reasons are very deep. And so it's our job to work collaboratively with our partners and find out what's going on and see if we can get them re-engaged in a healthy way. We're doing lots of different things up and down the valley. Like I said, our increased partnership with schools and youth-facing organizations is the most important part of our work right now. While we hold these, the other parts of our work that have been in motion and very strong with our court systems and district court judges and lawyers, we maintain that. It's very strong, but we really want to increase our collaborations with schools and youth-facing organizations so that we can really swim upstream so that we're not catching it when it's too late. And that's a big part of our work right now. We've increased our referral system so that it's more efficient for our partners and our families. We're working to decrease barriers right now through our equity and access work. So a lot of the work that we are doing with our partners right now is finding ways to waive fees and funding specifically for direct school-based referrals for incidents that happen during the school day. We know that access barriers for families tend to be funding, being able to access mental health services and other services free of charge or at a very reduced rate. We know that transportation can be a big barrier, so we're working to identify satellite offices, parachute to Aspen, so that we can go to our clients and families and we're not asking them to come to one of our primary offices. And we're also increasing our language services so that there are always bilingual services available for translation, and all of our materials are being or have been interpreted or translated at this point. So those are just kind of some of the things that we're working on, and it's a lot of work. It's a big lift to change some of these systems to be able to have our families increase access and ease. And one of the things I think I'm most proud about for USON and our board at USON is their approval to waive direct school referrals for incidents that happen during the school day. So I think that that's one of the things when I go out into the community that I'm proud to say the USON board supports. And I'm really happy about that. We still continue to use a youth trauma survey I can talk to you a lot more at length about that, but that survey really helps us when youth walk in the door. It helps us identify what is the menu of intervention and services. We continue to use that. It's a very strong focal point for us. It really is the anchor of our work. We work with a researcher who helped us to design that, and we continue to work with him to help us evaluate our effectiveness on an ongoing basis. I will just, overall, we work with about 550 youth, Aspen to Parachute. That also includes their families. So although the impact for direct referrals is about 550 youth on average, we know that we have a wider impact with the family, because when the youth comes in, the entire family comes in. And then if there are preschoolers or elementary age kiddos, we know that when we work with a family and increase positive collaboration and positive solutions within the family structure, we impact all youth, not just the youth who is referred. Within Basalt, or within our whole region, our ethnicity representation really closely reflects the ethnicity representation in our schools, and that's a really positive thing for us. It helps us really have a pulse on if our representation is really reflective of the youth within our schools. We know that our accessibility and our outreach is reaching the right population of kiddos, and it's accessible to all. So we're excited about that, and if ever that dips or changes, we know we have to look at how are we reaching out and how are we communicating with our partners and our families so that everyone knows that they can come for help and they can come for support. Within Garfield County is our largest. Pitkin is smaller. Obviously, it's smaller, but it's also a little bit of a less referral point, although we're increasing our referrals there. So historically, it's been a little bit less in Pitkin County. But it's increasing, and so we're excited to see that too, because that means that as we increase our visibility and accessibility in communities, there are youth in need everywhere. So we're excited about that as well. Within Basalt itself, we look at our referrals that come in and the reason for referrals, and we know that right now 50% of the reason for referrals for our youth from any one of our sources is substance-based. Overall in Garfield County, if we take in all of our communities in Garfield County, that's 30% of the reason for referrals. We're increasing at a pretty fast rate our ability to be able to respond to substance intervention through increasing staff. So we have a couple of grants that we're writing right now when we are just very successful at, so we're excited we'll be able to increase our staffing to be able to really be very responsive to the referrals that come in that are substance focused. As you know, it's a really high need and it's kind of off the charts right now. So we're working to increase our ability to be responsive and effective there. In the city of Glenwood specifically, we are hosting a regular substance group at the high school. We're working closely with Glenwood Springs High School and the staff there to help us test how this model might work and how we might expand this model up and down across the valley. So although it's Glenwood specific, we hope to be able to build that out so that it's an ongoing support for our youth in our schools on a regular basis. In the city of Basalt, on average from 2016 over a 5-year period of time, we serve on average about 49 youth. And when we look at the impact of all the other family members who are involved in that intervention and support as well, that turns out to be about 682 total in the city of Basalt, and your dollars directly help us do that work. So again, we're very grateful for that. I should be just looking up there. I'm kind of jumping all around, aren't I? Sorry about that. I think I just wanted to update you on where we were. We're increasing our access, finding funding to decrease costs for families. We're increasing our substance supports and intervention right now in order to be able to increase our staffing and hire more people. And then another really exciting thing that's on the horizon for us is the development of a youth advisory committee. So we have youth from Aspen to Parachute who are applying for positions on our youth advisory board. And they're helping us monthly to assess how we're doing, give us feedback from their standpoint, and take on projects that really matter to them in our communities. So just another exciting initiative that we're taking on that we feel really proud of, and we believe in youth voice, so we plan to get them engaged and involved. That's all
Great.
I have.
Well, thank you very much. That's a
so
good
welcome.
and comprehensive update. It occurs to me that, we're going to have more and more conversations about tobacco tax proceeds, and we have a national, a little later tonight, we're going to have a discussion about a national opioid settlement, so it may provide some funding to the town. So stay close to this gentleman over here. So, this looks like like there may be a good fit in terms of our mission for improving mental health circumstances in the community.
Sure.
Right.
I thought I'd just mention as a reminder that in our regular budget, we have a line item in there for Youth Zone annually, and so that was about $5,000. But then they did benefit from our tobacco tax last year. So they submitted for 2 grants. One was for the truancy, and then one for some of their regular programming, each for $10,000. So we were able to put some of that money to good use, and hopefully we'll be able to continue to circulate that.
Great.
Do another round of grants, maybe bigger ones this time.
Comments, questions,
Thank you.
discussion? Gary, thanks.
Good. No,
Great.
this is
Thank you.
awesome.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Jamie.
Thank you,
Good,
Jamie.
good,
Thank
good
you for the
update.
time, and I so appreciate your support.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks for coming in, Jamie. Thank you.
So with that, we will now turn to council actions. Item 7A, our first item, is appointment to Parks, Open Space, and Trails Committee. This is the appointment for Reed Howie to the post. So Reed, come on up, sit down. This gentleman is no stranger to open space and land conservation activities. I've known Reed. We're getting to the age, Reed, that maybe I shouldn't say how long I've known you. That's
we both had hair.
that's right. So I don't know who wants to carry this, Susan, maybe.
Sure, and Reed, just to warn you that they like you to talk into the mic about 4 inches away from the mic, or you'll get scolded. So this is just an opportunity for the council to meet Reed, find out why he's interested in serving on post, and what he thinks that he'll bring to the commission. You'll remember that when you set up kind of the procedure for doing committees, that except for P&Z, you wanted the committees themselves to weigh in and take the lead on the appointments. And Reed came to several post meetings, so I think he knows what he's signing up for. The post committee at their October 13th meeting voted to recommend Reed to post. And it is his birthday today, I think, because he's getting ready to go for his birthday dinner. So, Reed, do you want to just kind of give us a brief I don't know that everybody knows who Reed is that on council, so if you could just give a brief update and why you're interested in post.
Sure. Oh, it's good to see many of you again and meet some of you who I don't really know. There are materials on me in the packet, but I've lived in Basalt for a little over 3 years and have worked a lot in government in a variety of capacities, but have spent a lot of time thinking about parks and open space and wildlife and wilderness areas on a large scale and on a small scale, both with Aspen Valley Land Trust and then the Wilderness Land Trust and some other work that I've done. And I really believe that the way to keep a community vital is part of it anyway, is to have an effective system of parks, open space, and trails to make a community livable. So this is, for me, is an opportunity to give back to a town that I live in, while at the same time being able to do work that I enjoy and that I'm very interested in. So I can answer any questions that you may have, or if I haven't kind of described things well enough, please let me know, but I'm really interested in the appointment.
Fantastic. Questions for Reed? So you've had plenty of experience with the Wilderness Land Trust, and you probably are pretty well versed on what we've done in the Basalt area with Gary Tenenbaum's organization and Eagle County Open Space. We've partnered with both those entities, and you know, we do have now a pretty respectable source of revenue to support Post. Would that be your principal interest, or you interested in the whole bag, or do you see yourself? I can see you being quite an asset to that board in terms of thinking creatively about land conservation and open space preservation. Is that
Thank you.
your main strong suit, or are you interested in some other items in there?
Well, I'm just very interested in it, and I have worked a great deal in it, and would like to participate to try and help out with that program. I do see open space and parks as being a very finite resource, and that it's important to protect them going forward, and there is always pressure to convert and do other things. And effectively managing them, which this organization has done, is key to being able to preserve that resource.
Well, I would just say personally, go ahead, Bill. Sorry. See you there.
I kind of had two questions, Reed, but they're not necessarily only directed to you, or two requests. One, you are clearly the right guy for the job, and I'm so thankful that you volunteered, and I'm so thankful that Post has recommended you for this position, because it's really a great asset to us in the community of Basalt.
Thank you.
The first ask, the town, approximately 2 years ago, adopted a strategic framework that guides our forward thinking. The 4 strategic objectives include one on environment, and I think we're really strong on kind of the energy and the brown side. We could use a little bit of new thinking on some of the other dimensions, notably the green side. So habitat conservation, biodiversity conservation, and I would love it if you could share your insights after having a little bit of time to settle in, to help us strengthen that element of our strategic framework, because in my opinion, we can do more. And to wit, Lisa and I have both been very enthusiastic to support Mountain Pact and other environmental initiatives, but in as much as we set aside park, we're not looking at what defines wildlands in terms of any kind of quantitative measure. So your help there would be absolutely great, and thank you for volunteering, and I sincerely hope that we will welcome you for the next 4 years or 3 years, whatever it is. As a request to staff, and I guess our committees, one of our other strategic objectives and goals focuses on kind of diversity and inclusion. And so if we could reach out to try to recruit for that kind of element of our interest as well, for other positions that may be open going forward, I just want to remind us to all be sensitive to that. And I mean, we're so thankful for every volunteer. And if we could find others to sit in on some of the committees to bring even more diverse thoughts and views, that would be great.
You bet.
Okay. Any other comments, questions?
I'm all excited. Thanks, Reed.
Welcome.
Mayor, I move that the town council appoint Reed Howie to Post for a term ending April 30th, 2024.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No opposition, Reed. That's excellent.
Don't let us down.
No, seriously, thank you for helping the town, and Reed brings a wealth of experience and smarts that are really going to be well appreciated here, so thanks a lot.
Well, I hope I can live up to that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Happy birthday.
And happy birthday.
Yes, happy birthday.
All right, let's all sing.
You really want this, we can start it.
So our next order of business is item 7B. This is a continued public hearing and resolution number 38, series of 2021. This is a resolution of the Town Council of Basalt, Colorado, approving the CSC sketch plan application to construct a grocery store and 67 residential apartment units on lots A and E of the Basalt Center subdivision with associated improvements. James.
And Mayor, I will be recusing myself from this item.
Certainly. Understood.
Yes, just a quick second, just trying to share my screen on Zoom.
Okay.
And just a reminder that there is a sign-up sheet that I'm passing around, so if you're gonna speak, if you could fill that out, that would be very helpful.
Do you not want to do any more caffeine? There is no, I don't want to do any more grapefruit.
All right, I think we're all situated here. So this is a continued public hearing on an application submitted by Basalt BCC LLC,
Good? Yeah.
requesting approval of CSC sketch plan approval to remove the existing building on the BCC property and replace it with a grocery store of about 9,000 square feet and 67 residential apartments on the upper floors. There's a draft resolution in the council's packet that starts on page 35, and it's got changes that are highlighted from the September resolution that was in your packet. The property, as has been noted in prior meetings, is the BCC property. It includes the vacant prior Clark's Market and Habitat Restore space. It also includes the Jimbo's Liquor and BLT spaces along the west side here, as well as the decorative materials space on the east side of the building. It also includes the commonly owned parking lot that is commonly owned by the HOA, and they provided consent for the applicant to include that. At the September 28th meeting, the applicant described changes to the proposal at the direction and comments of the town council. At that meeting, the applicant described that they were looking at the concept of going from 4 stories to 3 and to increase the amount of deed-restricted affordable housing up to 25% of the units and floor area. The council at that meeting provided general positive feedback on that direction. So the applicants have provided updated materials in your application packet, and they're in the council's packet for review. The revised application materials include the reduction in the number of stories from 4 to 3 stories, as well as a reduction in the overall height from the 49 feet that was previously proposed to a height of 39 foot 6 inches on the flat portions of the building that are proposed, as you can see in this slide, and the applicant will go into this in more detail. They've also proposed to have 45 feet to the pitched roof elements that are limited on the structure. The applicants have also reduced the number of parking spaces in the enclosed parking area on the first floor of the building from 62 parking spaces to 56. And they've removed the tandem parking spaces that were part of the original design. In addition, the applicants have increased the number of deed-restricted dwelling units with rent caps from 11 deed-restricted units that were in the prior proposal to a total of 17 deed-restricted rental units to get to 25% of the overall number of units in the project to be deed-restricted with rent caps. They're proposed to be 11 as Category 1 units, and then 6 as Category 3 units, for a total of 17. The applicants have also continued to propose the 1.5% real estate transfer assessment for the creation of affordable housing purpose. The applicant is also still proposing to restrict the leases on 60% of the residential leases to 6 months. And they propose that there be no short-term rental as defined by the town code of 30 days or less. The applicants have also proposed, as you can see in their cover letter here, to add RE1 school district employees as well as emergency responders to individuals that would get occupancy priority in the deed-restricted units. And that would be in addition to employees actually working on the site. So that's the way it's laid out in the draft resolution. Also, as I noted, they've proposed to reduce the amount of parking from 62 to 56 spaces in the enclosed area. In terms of discussion items in the revised application that have been identified by staff and outlined in the first page of your staff memo, the height and massing, the applicants will go over in more detail, but that has been revised. They've also, as I indicated, revised the affordable housing mitigation as I outlined, and it is represented as was outlined in the draft resolution pretty specifically. In terms of the timing of the grocery store in relation to the residential units, the applicant has proposed that the grocery store would come along within 9 months of a CO on the residential portion. And they propose that because it takes longer to finish out a grocery store than it does the residential units. And the applicant can speak more to that. The draft condition that you have in your resolution still requires the grocery store to come along concurrently with a CO on the residential piece of the project. The council would need to amend that condition through a motion to allow for the grocery store to come along 9 months later, as has been requested by the applicants. So that would take an action. The applicant would like to have the 9-month requirement. Other topics for discussion include improvements in the Two Rivers Road right-of-way. Let me go back to the site plan. The applicant in their design and site plan have proposed a ramp down from Two Rivers Road so that there would be a better connection to the building from Two Rivers Road. The applicants in their proposal have proposed that the town pay for those improvements in the right-of-way, like the ramp, if the town would like those improvements made. Or they've included that if the town doesn't want those improvements made or doesn't want to pay for them, the town wouldn't have to make those improvements. In the draft conditions, they require that the applicants make those improvements. So if council wanted to go with the applicant's suggestion, you would have to amend the draft resolution with your motions. Other topics include the grocery store definition. As was noted at a previous meeting, the definition of grocery store in the application requires that 70% of the space would be for selling traditional primary goods that you would get in a grocery store, and not secondary goods such as liquor, alcohol, or pharmaceuticals. And so staff has included that the definition could be worked on between sketch and final plan between staff and the applicant, but staff generally believes that this would provide for a more kind of traditional grocery store, but could leave open the potential for kind of variations on that theme. Other topics include the reduction of the parking spaces in the enclosed parking area from 62 to 56. As was noted, the reason was for better circulation as well as to remove the tandem parking spaces that were originally proposed. The benefit to that is it would reduce the tandem parking scenario, which wasn't ideal. But the drawback is that it doesn't take pressure off of the common parking lot even though there was a reduction in units removed from the scope of the project. However, the conditions as they're written in the draft resolution include the 56 parking spaces that the applicant has proposed in their revised application. So those are really discussion items that staff has come up with for conversation this evening. This evening, staff would suggest hearing from the applicants as they'll go into more detail on the application and the revised design. And then staff would suggest taking public comments and providing council discussion. Ultimately, if council has some more questions about what's in the resolution or some of the provisions, staff would be happy to go over those after public comment.
Okay.
That said, we've got the applicants here this evening. We've got Tim Belinsky and Andrew Light and Scott McHale from Z Group Architects.
Gentlemen, good evening.
Good evening.
Floor is yours if you would like to make some remarks and let us know where you are here.
Thanks. James, you did an excellent job running down where we stand on the project. Last meeting, we were here talking about 4 stories conceptually being moved to 3. So Scott McHale from Z Group Architects looks forward to showing you those renderings. We were able to hold to 67 apartment units, and we, I think, covered the ground pretty well there with James with regard to the rent capped affordable units, now achieving 25% of those total apartments, and that's 10% beyond what the CSC zone district requires, which is the 15%, and the RETA of 1.5% still being in place. The other thing that we took away from the last meeting is the response to the character of the building, and took on as a group the design to be more Western personality, Western character in its look on a 3-story building in Basalt. The primary focus in terms of moving it to 3 stories is that that was what we were hearing the most about, that was the most vocal component that we were hearing in terms of concerns and criticisms, and we took that into account. We do see, and Scott will touch on how the building looks, and thank you, James, for showing the cross-section, showing the overall height. Obviously, in taking off a floor, we want to have it look like it removed a floor as well, and we thought we were pretty effective getting there. There are some instances where the gable roofs and the shed roof features, which provides the variation on the top line of the roof, are there, we think, pretty effectively, but that's also where Scott will describe where those hit certain heights above the 39 feet, 6 inches. We did add and took the liberty of adding 2 additional feet in height to the ground floor retail area, the grocery store area, so that ceiling will come in around 13 feet high and 13 feet clear. And that's just a better height than we were at, which was 11. And as a comparison, Whole Foods is 22 feet clear to the inside, 22 feet if they had a ceiling, but 22 feet clear to the HVAC that's up there. And City Market is around 17 feet in height. So grocery stores definitely benefit from having functionally and appearance-wise a little more height. And like I said, we'll be at 13 feet if we get it all put together here with this plan. We did maintain the grocery store at 9,000 square feet. We really believe, and as we talk with grocery store operators as potential candidates, that's about the right amount of square footage that really allows them to operate a real store. The successful outdoor patio area, we were able to leave that as it was, and also the improvements to the parking lot. The parking garage change has a lot to do with the quality of the circulation inside that parking garage area, and definitely removing the tandems. Although we've got buildings where we've worked with tandem parking, it's just not as good. You know, if you were in the mode of having your cars bumper to bumper in your parking spaces, and you've got to coordinate that. It's something to avoid if it can be avoided. So we were happy to see that be removed. And then we were also charging Scott and the team, and including, by the way, Katie Tabor with Connect One for anything, she was here, for anything in the area that could provide more residential storage in the parking garage. So we're pretty proud and pretty pleased with what we've come up with, and believe that we should turn it over to Scott to provide a rundown. What we would encourage you guys to access are these TVs, both for the members of the public as on this side and members of council on this side. It's far more detailed than this projector screen off to the side. As it relates to the grocery store's opening, which is in the draft condition that James touched on, the time it takes not to just finish the building, because that's just finishing a building and we're finishing upstairs as well, but the time it takes to stock the inventory, the time it takes to train staff to do the grand opening sequence, there are months of time beyond what it will take to extend the opening beyond what it would take to open the residential apartments on the upper floors. So that's what's behind that request. It's a pretty big deal. There's really no way for the grocery store to be open, grand opened, in the same timeline that it would take for the residential. So we'd ask that that be considered as a change to the conditions that are in front of you. And then I think, simply put, the right-of-way berm, the grass berm alongside Two Rivers Road that shows in the site plan with a ramp and a little more landscaping, it's adequate as it is. And if the town, looking at that as their property, and our ask the town absorb that cost, we did a cost estimate with our contractor. It was 6 figures. And if the town is okay with leaving it as is, so are we, and we would just leave it as is, and obviously improve the asphalt and everything inside the parking lot, and emphasize that more so than the grassy area up on the berm. So that's all I've got. Scott McHale.
Thanks, everybody. Next slide, please, James. All right. Let's jump in. Thanks, everybody. We tried to attack and design this as fast as we could. So sorry we couldn't make it to the last meeting. It was 2 weeks was too soon. So we needed a little bit of time to press it out and, really come to a resolution that we could all live with and be happy with. We live here, we love it, and we want to see a project that we're proud of. So we want to, get it through expeditiously, but also present something that is, very humbling and I think presentable to everybody and something that people will be happy with. So we've taken all the comments that have been out there. We tried to process them, work through what we need programmatically for the building, but then also for the community and the development team. And so here we go. So much of the, let's go to the next slide, James. I'll run through the renderings and what it actually looks like coming up. So this slide, we're just giving context. So obviously the site and the development has stayed the same. Next slide, please. So we're just kind of refreshing your memory. Architecturally, we've got Main Street, historic precedent, railroad historic precedent, grocery store, and then also now we're going to start folding in Western architecture, which is going to be a bit more of timbers and sloping roofs that we can pull from railroad and from, kind of modern day architecture that we see out there today, and things that we reflect on and see in the rural landscape in the Western Slope region as well. Next slide, please. Site plan wise, pretty much the same as we said. The front gathering area, the common area for the grocery store remains the same. The grocery store frontage on the west remains the same. On the south side, and this was comments that reach back to P&Z, is we've brought the retail across the south more, so there's more storefront, as we can see the light green, wraps around the residential stair entry. And then we can see the residential entry stays on axis, pretty similar to where it was. The common landscape area in the light green has increased. Before it was around 500 square feet, now it's 676, something like that. So again, we've increased that breadth of it, of what you see from the parking lot and what's enjoyable. And then the space next to it, as Tim mentioned, is now more bike storage and owner storage for the project. So we thought that was very important to see. The auto entry in and out remains the same, in the same location as the last revision, and then the parking lot has been revised as discussed, omitting the tandem spaces. Again, gaining bike storage. There was a flex space that was part of over by the grocery store. We added 2 parking spaces in that space instead. We thought that's a little better give and take to take a little heat off the parking lot area. So we feel pretty comfortable with this plan now, and we think it's remains just as inviting or better than it was before. Next slide, please. Moving into the character and the renderings and the style, and what we're seeing now is we've revised the architecture and design. Similarities, so we're still trying to embrace the 2-story historic kind of modular storefront and Main Street appearance of the commercial areas that are very much in tune with what's going on in downtown Basalt and surrounding areas. The 3rd floor is significantly stepped back, as we can see. So that 3rd floor, there was a 4th floor, so we lost a whole level on this facade. So there's a significant decrease on this side that we can see. The gathering area, the canopies, again, it's becoming more cohesive as we tighten up the design as we move into final. Next slide, please. Moving over to the Two Rivers entry, much similarity again, as we see, that's reduced from 4 stories to 3 stories. We can see some of the character developing. The brick, we've changed materials as we're kind of fine-tuning again, moving into final. But we can see that, and then now as we start going down the south, we can see the storefront glass reaching further down towards the parking area. Again, more inviting. We can get more of that storefront glass for the business owner inside and the grocery, so we can see what's going on in there, as well as lights on in the building. And then we can start seeing now the Western style architecture that starts going down on the south facade. What we have omitted is the large railroad inspired architecture, which was the darker steel. It was looked at as a little bit too harsh and maybe a little too industrial, so we wanted to soften it with this more kind of familiar architecture with sloping roofs, overhangs, covered balconies, timbers, and projections, and fenestration that's fitting of our area as well. Next slide, please. Moving down again into the southwest. In the parking view, we can see now that Western architecture really starting to reach down the building. We've got, more of that, more of a warm and earth tone materials with the lap siding and the vertical siding. It has more of a wood tone to it. We'll have to be respective of the new wildfire ordinance, but again, we want to get into those earthy wood tones that bring it to something that we're used to seeing in the western slope and region. And so we think that this fits really well as, again, the brick facade and the storefront come down and engage. We've got movement with the western architecture above. The gabled roofs and shed roofs, again, articulate that facade and, kind of changes the variability of the height, so it's not just a box that's out there, right? And that's a challenge, is building apartments, we need to make those as functional and as efficient as possible. This isn't a luxury condo building where, there's more funds available. For apartments, we have to be more strict, more efficient with how we design and how we put the project together. And so we feel pretty good that with these, there's enough movement in the building, there's articulation again, with the living room units that pop out a bit, there's good fenestration. We continue that railroad-inspired trestle, on the lower level, which we feel good for screening the trees and the storage area. Again, timbers and struts, timber columns that come down, and embrace the residential entry. We'll look at that more, in tune. Next slide, please. Going around to the southeast, we can see the the garage entry. Again, we can see that the screened trestle area, we can see the Western architecture, the sloped roofs as they're going down. Important to note as well is we're stepping back the corners, so we'll see as we wrap the corner this upper unit. So again, we wanted to soften so it's not just a 3-story facade everywhere. Again, we need some efficiency for realistic and functionality and how we can build the project. But on these corners where we could, we wanted to soften the mass and scale. So we can see on both ends, those shed roofs have a low slope to them, which, has a really good feel to it, which feels good, in the Basalt region and in the mountain region. Next slide, please. So we can see that as we wrap the corner, that unit is stepped back on 2 sides on the 3rd level. Again, it has a lower sloped shed roof. And then as we go down, we brought the brick around the building to hold that base. We'll have some openings in it, but it is a parking area. That's probably going to be a good location potentially for the art mural that we're talking about with the brick. Again, we want to try to, bring those elements into the project still. And then as we stretch the Western architecture down on the west, again, there's the 3-story form, parking on the main level, covered overhangs, balconies, decks. Next slide, please. Moving around to the north side, from the bank area, this is where we've, pushed the building back in. When we had to redesign it, we'll show in floor plan. Due to make it efficient, we had to push it to the south. And so with the electrical overhead lines and clearances that we have to maintain, we had to keep the bulk of the building on that side in order to make this work. We still had to add an extra stair to make the new design work. So that was an added thing that just was the only way to make the site work for that part of it. But again, we can see that the Western style architecture stretches back. It's lowered a story, but then pressed down. So that, from the bank side, it's pressed back even further. We have a little bit of it as it comes out to the ends. And then I think as, reading the bank's letter, this is in tune. We're very much supportive of the bank's, potential future expansion and redevelopment of their side. We think the projects could work great together. The electrical lines and the clearances and the buffer setbacks offer a great setback between the projects. So it actually will be, we embrace what they'll be doing in the same place. It won't interfere with the livability of our project either. So it'll be a nice part of town all coming together if that comes through in the future. Next slide, please. This is a photo simulation. So we had the 4-story before, looking from Midland, from around where Heather's is, looking across that crosswalk. And we could see now that with the 3-story, we could see the full ridge line now. We removed a story, basically. And if anything, this is probably a little higher to be conservative than it's supposed to be. These are hard to gauge. But this is the best simulation that we can do. Next slide, please. Site elements, again, we'll just look at these quickly since these haven't changed, but again, just to kind of bring it back into focus of what we're talking about. Front gathering area, front entry to the grocery store, softening that entrance into it and becoming a community gathering space and a place that's very welcoming. Next slide, please. Grocery and food hall images, same as before. So again, the definition of the grocery store and what we hope to see and live in this area even more so, and embrace what's here. Next slide, please. Similar to what we saw before, there's a little change in materials. Again, just more cohesion of that front entrance and really trying to really capture that front community area. Next slide, please. Again, similar depiction. Next slide. This is the residential entry. So this has changed a little bit in plan. So we can see that in the upper right. The residential entry is tucked back in. We have a mail area, and then it goes into the landscaped common area where there will be some seating and barbecue grills. And we see that even with it being covered versus with a trellis, it actually might be more useful. It'll work well. It'll be protected from the sun. The extra height that we have for the grocery store actually adds to this space so we can get sun, deeper back into the space. So we think that's going to be a very usable area. It's, it's part of what we see out there with co-housing examples of, trying to bring community together. So, there's studio units, there are people in here who are, single or small families, but again, it's an extra living room that they can come down, have a kid's birthday party, have a barbecue really quickly at night or on the weekend. So we think it is a valuable asset to the project. Next slide, please. Again, here's that residential feel. So we're really trying to get that residential entry and make it feel inviting. So it's a covered entry. There's good depth to it. We could see it reach across to the right, and it's tucked under. Again, we have the screening element to the parking garage, plenty of space, a good landscape buffer in front. So we feel pretty excited about this. I think it's very inviting. We've got nice covered overhangs on the decks above, as well as nice usable balconies facing south. So yeah, good community interaction there with people coming in and livability that we're trying to get to. Next slide, please. Again, just another shot just showing, more of the inside of what that, can be. So more of that character. Next slide, please. Running through the plans really quickly. I think James and Tim looked at these and did a good job. So now we can see the grocery store. Square footages are about the same. We had to move things around. Again, that flex space that was below the mechanical electrical, we added 2 parking spaces there instead. As we brought around, again, that landscape area, we tucked back the residential entry. So we have our lobby and stair that gets into the core of the building. We still have our ADA spaces. Now with the tandem spots gone, that common landscape area could become bigger. And then the bike room and storage we think is a really useful amenity. So aside from the storage that they'll have up in their units and the storage that's upstairs, this will be additional storage for bikes or gear, which is very useful, as we know, for the inhabitants that live in the valley. So I think this will be very useful. We can have electric car charging stations, all over the spaces as we know are going to be required in the future for successful projects. So lots of bike storage options that we have everywhere. Again, also the awnings and canopies, wrap around. We think it's important to, get that shade and relief from the elements, as well as add some character to the building. Next slide, please. Second level. So now we're getting into the units. We can see that there's a mixture of the studios, the 1 bedrooms and the 2 bedrooms, as we see those on the second level. The studios are out at the 0 lot line, over top of the commercial space. So those do not have balconies, and those would be to meet their compliance for common space. That's the lower, the first level common space. Other units, we're trying to do decks and balconies on all of those. We think that those help the architecture and the design and livability. And so we can see that. Unit plans, very similar to what we had before. There have been some small modifications, but it still all works really well for the project. So we're very happy with that. We can see the electrical clearances of the overhead lines, so those setbacks on the north that we're trying to adhere to. Next slide, please. Now, as we go up to the 3rd level, we can see that now on the west facade, instead of the studio units, now we have a 2-bedroom and then 1-bedroom unit stretching across the west. Again, those are set back, I think that's around 8 feet, something like that. So again, and that articulates that front. So there's a good setback and relief with overhangs above. So those should, recede back, but still be very livable and be quite a nice unit, to be honest, up there. And then as we stretch across the south, we have 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms. There in the corner, we can see that corner unit, another amazing unit on that corner, set back on both sides with a nice deck and balcony. Studio units going to the north as it wraps up the east, and then studio units and 1 bedrooms on the inner core, as we can see there. We can see the lockers, again, stairs, as they've moved around a bit. We've added a stair to the northwest. but stairs, elevators, and lockers all still intact inside. We have denoted, right now, you can see the affordable housing units with the AHU, so affordable housing unit, rent capped units are as, kind of sprinkled throughout. There's a variety of locations that we, feel are acceptable and do, offering a variety to, affordable, the rent capped units versus the typical market units. James, can you go down to the second level? Sorry, backwards one. And we can see those sprinkled throughout as well. On the west side, there are the 4 studios and the 1-bedroom studios, and then over on the east side, the affordable housing units. And then on the south, we have the 2-bedroom in the middle, which is a really nice unit looking down. Okay, third level again, and next page. So section, James went through this. Again, we did add, we wanted to make we talked about it, and again, that livability and usability and vitality of the grocery store, we want to see succeed. We know that most grocery stores do have that extra height. Studying a lot of examples in this valley and in Denver and many other regions where they're, doing these different, like in the Rhino District, some of the Central Market and other projects down there that are really trying to do something different and exciting. Again, this extra height gives us that flexibility for the grocer or different vendors inside to have that height with our exposed HVAC and ducting. There's some just amazing examples down there of what we can do. We can get taller glass, more windows. Again, with more windows and more glass, we can get that light, natural light back into the project. So from a functionality and livability, natural light is better than artificial light. It helps people buy grocery stores and makes people happy, point blank. So we can see those heights. That translates to better height in the parking garage, for storage and bikes on your cars and things like that. You don't have to take them off your car to get into the garage, which is nice and easy. I carry bikes on my truck, and it's a pain to have to take them down every time you have to go into a garage. So this would be a great functional thing, kayaks, all that. We can even fit Sprinter vans in here. So all those things I think are good. Residential second floor height remains the same. Upper level actually remains the same as well. We can see that for the top of the residential area, we're at the 39.6. Again, that's at the top. It'll be sloping back and down from there. We have tapered roof insulation and internal drains and some mechanical equipment up there. So we'll see that tucked in. No cornices on those. And then the lower section depicts where we have those, gabled forms or shed roof. The gable forms will be probably scissor trusses. Again, so we can give a little extra height and livability to those units. Plus, it activates that facade. It makes those units inside very nice. It's a little bit extra height, but again, to get that Western style architecture, this is a very effective way, and it helps the livability of those units. Those at the peak are around 45 feet midpoint. If we measure that, typical ordinances is around 41 feet. As a point of reference, James sent us the building across the way, the Carlo Bank building, Ski-Co, and traffic is at 42 feet on the facade facing us and 48 feet on the facade facing the parking garage. So we're about the same. But we're, I think, actually in elevation, our building's a little lower as it sits on the earth. So very similar to what their 3-story is across the street. Next slide, please. And thank you. We're excited to present this. We love the project and we're excited about it, and we hope you guys all feel the same way. It's been a great road. There's great comments, and with the criticism always begets us better architecture, so we embrace it and we'll keep moving forward. So thank you.
Thanks, Scott. What are council's druthers here? Would you like to hear from public first, or do you have questions for the applicant? Public first, guys? So, sure. Okay. So what we will do is take public comment at this point on the presentation and plan amendments. I will remind for those that would like to speak to please confine your comments to no greater than 3 minutes. I would advise you to try to make your points as succinctly and expediently as possible. 3 minutes goes very fast, and it is, I think the presentations that come to the point are best understood and received by council and probably service the speakers as well. So try to avoid loose and rambling narratives here. That doesn't really help us much up here. So please make your points as succinctly as possible. So with that, I will open the public hearing for resolution number 38. If you'd like to address council, please come up to the podium, and I will explain how this works. Also, I am the gatekeeper. This is one of the really attractive duties of being a mayor. So what we do here is, I've got a little timer here, so this is precise, and when you get to 3 minutes, my hand goes up. And you don't want the bucket of water to come down on you if you stay up here for much more than 3 minutes. So I'd advise you to try to be conscious about your time. So with that, the podium is open, and anyone would like to come up and address council, we'd be pleased to hear from you.
And while Frank is coming up, I'll just make the announcement that if you're watching on Grassroots and you would like to participate, the best way to do that is to hit the Zoom link that's on the first page of the agenda packet that you can download from the Agenda Center. And if that doesn't work, you can call 1-346-248-7799, and the webinar ID is 860-7194-3821. And if you have really a lot of trouble, text 970-379-1514.
Okay, before, Frank, you'll get to you in just a sec, but make sure when you address council, you tell us your name and address. Critically important for us to maintain the record here. So, Frank, welcome. Good to see you this evening.
Thank you.
So,
Good evening. I'm Frank Taverna. My residence is 405 Oak Run Road, Carbondale. I'm the owner of Lot A, which is the old city market, Clark's Market, Habitat Space, and Jimbo's and BLT Market. The Belinsky Light Team have listened to the comments from the public and staff. They've increased the affordable housing component to 25% from 15%. They've also listened to the comments regarding the impact of a 4-story building and reduced the height to 3 stories. These are good faith amendments made to better align the development with the desires of the community. My partner and I embrace this plan and believe a redevelopment of this property is long overdue. Over the years since Clark's Market vacated the building in 2014, we've been approached by various parties with different ideas ranging from hotels to farmers market, storage facility, auto storage, beer brewery, which we really liked and thought it'd be great for the downtown, but the Basalt Sanitation District denied this idea because of their infrastructure issues. And we've had numerous other proposals. The developers have stepped forward with a plan and have been willing to put their resources and hard work into making it happen. No other parties have been interested in doing that. There are always critics to change who believe they have great ideas and know what is best for Basalt. Some of these ideas are good and have been incorporated into the revised plan. Others simply are not feasible. The Basalt Center Association is the parking lot owners group. There are 10 properties and 8 owners in the association. They've unanimously approved the redevelopment of the property and agreed to improvements on parking lot property as proposed by the developers in their earlier plans. The changes of height and affordable housing percentage will be well received by the HOA. This development will also bring better oversight to managing the parking lot, and the developers will afford a policing mechanism that will more efficiently use the parking lot. Coordination between the HOA and the apartment manager will vastly improve the current situation. And we believe there will be less demand on the parking lot with better enforcement and less retail demand with a smaller element than in the past. The Belinsky Light Team have shown the ability to complete development and have the experience with the Basalt land use process, staff, and building department to make it work. Sorry I ran over.
Thanks, Frank.
Thank you.
Anyone else care to address council for resolution number 38?
Hi, Virginia Leffler, East Cypress Drive. I'm going to be very succinct this time. I have a letter here. It's signed by 11 educators that I work with, the kind of people who would be living in this. I do think y'all made some really nice changes, by the way. I think some of that stuff looks really great. I do think it keeps being said that they got rid of a story, but on parts of it, it's still just 4 feet. I just want to bring that up again. I still think that needs to come down, as do all of these people.
Excuse
I
us.
Town. I want to see
We're
it
not going to dock your time for that.
beautiful. Can I give this to somebody? No, just a second.
Hold on a sec till we get this.
It was spam.
Yeah.
You want to read this?
No, I don't want to read it. I read a letter last time, and I don't do well speaking in public, period.
You know, I think in light of the interruption, you can, if you want to start over, that's fine. We'll
I
start the
don't
clock.
really even want to start over. I'm just going to give y'all that.
In the record,
A lot of
Pam.
people still think this building is too tall. You know, losing one floor, they need to lose one whole floor. It looks a lot better than it did. I appreciate all of y'all's time. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
And I have a number of letters that I'm gonna enter into the records, if you could remind me to do that.
Yeah,
Isn't that part of the same letter?
I think I think it's just one copy.
I was running out of room for signatures. So I wrote down a second one.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought it was the same letter.
It's the same letter. It's
Okay.
2 copies with extras.
But if you
All right,
want-
anyone else like to address council, please come on up. Tell us your name and address.
Get rid of this. Good evening, guys. Thank you all for working on this so much. It's got to be hard, I can't imagine, being on town council. And thanks to your presentation tonight. It was a nice job and definitely has more appeal to me than the last one did. I do like, and there's some things I don't like, and I know there's always a give and take here. I'm still concerned about the parking and the traffic that comes with these units. And I don't know if we've done a study to see how it's going to affect. I know you mentioned one, but that was just hard for me to believe, especially at the busy times of day, traffic coming out of there to a 4-way stop. I know people currently already have parking issues during the middle of the day or during the busy part of the day, maybe not late at night. But I've heard that a lot when you come downtown to take an appointment. I don't know what you meant by more management of the parking. The other thing town might have to consider is that we are a fishing town. We do have those boats. To me, this new parking lot looks great, but it doesn't look like it's got room for those women who bring their boats and park them along there. So I don't know if we have another area that can be considered for such things. I don't know if we tend to use this up for the grocery store and the apartments and the people traveling in and out or visiting. So that was my main concern talking about tonight. I have other things, but that was the one that I concerned. And 2, I know you probably are talking about managing parking also in general because it's been so crazy this past summer and continues to be so. So I don't know what your plans are, but I know you're probably thinking about it, but thank you.
And would you mind just stating your name and address
Oh,
for the
I
record?
didn't?
Yeah.
I just said hi. Valerie Brewington, 628 East Cypress Drive. You know it well.
Yes,
Okay. Anyone else like to address council? I think we may have some, yes, come on up. And We almost may have some callers too.
Yeah.
I think David Hodgkin's on the call, so good evening.
Good evening. Hello, my name's Andrea Morales. I live at 8207 Elk Run Drive at the Villas. Some of my comments are going to just be posed as questions for ideas to think about. My first question about this project is who's supposed to benefit and how is this enhancing our community? I've looked at the blueprints for the proposed plan. We'd need at least 70 parking places just for the new potential residents, as it looks like there's 36 new units on level 2 and 31 on level 3. Now, let's be clear, 28 of those units on level 2 are 434 square feet approximately, meant for long-term housing. There are 7 one-bedroom apartments at 622 square feet and 1 two-bedroom apartment. Who would want to live in such a teeny space for any length of time? We ripped out the pan and fork and let the property sit vacant for years as we as a community debated on the best way to develop the land with a focus on how to stimulate the foot traffic in Old Town. Lots of ideas came up, even a market. Trader Joe's, which everybody loves, was one of those ideas. Trader Joe's, to my understanding, was approached and the town of Basalt was told they could not move into the downtown corridor because there were not enough parking spaces. There still is not enough parking spaces. My next point is that we have a market. It's called Skips. Skips is set to expand. It is a very unique farm-to-table sort of operation that carries a variety of meats, produce, and locally farm-raised goods. Why are we undermining a thriving business in our Old Town community? We have 2 large markets, 5 to 7 minutes down the street at the Willets. The new development looks like a huge chunk of Willets landed in Old Town Basalt. As we look to the past and glean some insight as to how we move forward, how can Basalt sustain all this growth while keeping its charming Old Town feel and not become a total cluster, just as the Willets has become? There are 56 parking spaces and 16 HOA that are on the blueprint from what my fiance and I were looking at. 16 cannot be found in the actual blueprint. Maybe we've missed something, but that's kind of what our take was from as we were looking at it. The development feels more like a space being created for Ski Coast seasonal workers, not residents who need affordable housing and reasonably comfortable housing. 443 square feet is like living in a shoebox. And finally, a project of this magnitude lays precedents for much larger structures to be built in historic downtown Basalt in the future. I do not think that this is a healthy direction to go in. And on the way over here, looking around Basalt, it's kind of our off-season right now. And over on Two Rivers Road, there was barely any parking to be had, and half of the merchants are either closed or there's not even businesses there. So this is something I think we really need to think long and hard about, putting such a huge space that's going to have lots and lots of people. In all of the photographs that they showed, there would be 1 or 2 cars. There will be cars everywhere. And I just don't think that this project is right for downtown and Old Town Basalt. Thanks for listening.
Okay. Anyone else?
Hold on. Kathleen Cole, 589 East Cypress Drive. I just have a couple of comments that I'm unclear about. When you're discussing the affordable care units, 60% of the units will be dedicated to local residents. And I'm just unclear about the other 40% of the units, not local. Can he answer that, or no questions?
Yeah, Catherine, this,
Back to
just
that, okay.
address your
Okay,
comments to
so
council.
that's-
You can't really have
those
a
are things
dialogue with the applicant.
that I still, after a long time. I also, Andrew and I met, and he got back to me and said that the outdoor seating area, the front gathering space, was 50 by 70 feet,
And, you know, in all the pictures, it looks fabulous, and I want it to be the there that this town so desperately needs. I just want to make sure that does not include parking in front of the seating area, because it kind of, we went over with a tape measure, and it doesn't look like there's enough space. And it just goes back to traffic. This was the outreach themes in the executive summary of the planning, on the planning website. And improve port traffic flow, add parking in Old Town, mitigate traffic issues during commuter hours, traffic/parking concerns was a huge portion of the what we heard move. And in my mind, I still don't understand how in the world we're going to navigate that four-way stop and have people coming and going in and out. So maybe one way, I don't know, but I think it's something that we need to pause, and if it's get a traffic survey. It just seems that it's really, really necessary. The other comment that I had was, of the affordable 17 units of deed restricted units, I question whether the developer should get preference. I think you should make that part of your compensation package for the employees. So you give part of the other 60%, you take off a couple $100 a month instead of your employees getting preference. It's just a money thing. That's it.
Thank you. Anyone else care to address council that's in the audience tonight? And then we'll go to our callers. Okay, so callers, Pam, how are we doing this? Do people have their hands up, or or we just take them in order? Or how?
Rager.
Pardon?
Mr. Rager now has his hand up. Dave Hodgson has removed his hand, so
Okay.
if Dave wishes to speak, he's put it back up.
Okay.
How would you like to go, from top
So,
to bottom?
yeah, well, let's hear from Dave Hodgkin first, and
Mr.
then
Mayor.
we'll go to,
Bill?
yeah.
Sorry, Rick was out waiting. He wanted to.
Oh, okay.
Get one more in person.
Why don't you wait for Dave, and then we'll take you, Rick. Thanks. Dave Hodgkin, you're up. You got 3 minutes.
Sorry about the little hand. Figuring out whether the hand was blue or white or whatever it meant, but I think I'm up now. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. We have a historic town of Basalt, and I've done lots of development in historic areas. And one thing that's important about history in towns is mass. It's not so much, I mean, it's important what their project looks like. They call this kind of a historic look. It's really not. It's really more mountain modern, which emphasis on the modern. And they talk about the height being similar to what's across the street at about Two Rivers Road. But we're talking about Midland Avenue, and this project is way too massive. And one way, and if you look at the photos that they presented in there, it shows some nice markets, some common areas, none of which are in their project. They don't have, little running tracks. They show a market with 20-foot ceilings. So the question is, what is the town of Basalt getting out of this project? It's a massive, profitable project, I know, because I've done projects like this. So what is the town of Basalt getting? And one way to solve this whole issue is put the parking underground. Now, I've heard it said that, you can't put the parking underground because the water table's too high. I can tell you for a fact, I've built projects with basically called reverse swimming pools, where I put parking underground with high water tables. So it can be done. And the only reason it's not being done is because it puts more money in the developer's pocket. So why don't we consider taking a floor off this project, putting the parking underground where it should be, and preserving historic downtown Basalt. And I can tell you, there's still plenty money left over for the developers after doing that. And the town gets something that will preserve downtown. The parking is just simply not enough. One last issue I'd like to make is that what's driving this development is the apartment building. And I think that's great. I hope they make lots of money. But to defer the market is a mistake, because the number one concern in Basalt master plan done just a year ago was to bring a traditional market downtown Basalt. And I don't believe that what the developers have provided for as height in the building and the size is enough to bring a downtown traditional market. And if they're able to build the apartment first and delay the market, I'm afraid that all we're going to end up with a big vacant space like we've had for a decade. And so I think it would be a big mistake. We should put the parking underground. That would allow some common areas for people to walk through and provide something for the citizens of the town of Basalt, and to make sure that the market's there first before they're able to build the apartment. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, David, would you please tell us your name and address, please? We forgot to ask you at the beginning of your comments.
Tea House Trail, Basalt. Thank you.
What's your address?
He said it just got cut off. He said it got cut off. It's Tejas Trail, Basalt.
He said it.
He said it. Please go.
I didn't hear
I didn't
that.
hear the address.
I'm sorry.
Tejas Trail.
He has it in his notes.
Did you get his address, Pam?
But I'll figure it out. I can
Okay.
get it.
Tejas Trail.
I don't know where Tejas Trail is, but thank you.
Anyone else like to speak that is calling in? You'll have to raise your hand.
We have a Bentley Rager.
Bentley.
Dave, can you mute?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, Bentley, hi. Please tell us your name and address, and if you'd like to comment. I'm sorry.
Perfect.
Pam, can you?
My name is Bentley Rager. Can you hear me? And I grew up in Old Snowmass at 1780 Snowmass Creek Road. And this site and this project mean quite a bit to me growing up in the area. So much so that I took the project on as my thesis project in architecture school back in 2020, where I devoted a significant amount of my time and efforts to analyzing the program and the massing for this site. And although my scheme looked a little different, I'm pretty excited to see what Z Group has worked on and what they're bringing to life. I feel like it carries many of the same principles and solutions that I was trying to with my scheme. And I know this project has been in the works for almost as long as I've been around, but I can't wait to see what it can do for the town of Basalt. And I think that moving forward, my one piece that I really hope they address a little bit more, I've seen a huge improvement since the August meeting, but I just hope that more attention is paid to the open space so that part of this, it's really for the public of Basalt. And I know we have the park right there, but it should just feel like a piazza and it should welcome everybody in. And so I hope that, combined with the awesome market space going into the grocery, can be a great space for not just the residents in the new building, but for all Basalt and the greater area as well. So, thank you.
Thanks, Bentley.
Thanks.
So next, anyone else calling in that would like to address council? Rick, why don't you come on up?
Evening, Rick Stevens, Riverside Drive in Basalt, and thanks for hanging in there, you guys. This takes a lot of perseverance. I just wanted to read a couple things out of the migration to the mountains that are interesting to me, but I'll start by thanking you for the ballot question you presented to the town. I think that that has a kind of a three-legged stool that I like: environment, affordable housing, and downtown improvements. Those are things that have been on the roster for a long time, and I hope that this ballot question passes. I think that that also ties into this project in that this project has gone through the master plan process. It does represent a density in downtown that you've been looking for, that would be more transit oriented and things like that, so it addresses the environment. And it brings people into the core, which I think is important. So those things are starting to come together and intersect pretty positively in my mind. The challenge that they talk about in the migration to the mountains is that people like the mountains. And they're coming here from everywhere. And these periods of intense growth that we're feeling in these mountain communities kind of result in a backyard backlash, not in my backyard backlash. And I think the result of these backlash moments or pushback moments on projects like this create a resistance that doesn't allow you to take the necessary steps to address the challenges we face as mountain communities, whether it's early childhood education, housing, wages, workforce, whatever the heck it is. These reactions really impact attempts to create solutions. We've been trying to create solutions in this community for some of these things for a long time, and we have found solutions to some of the problems. But usually what happens is you end up in a high-end project. And I think we just heard the suggestion that we knock a floor off, build underground parking at a huge expense, and that would be a high-end project at the end of the day. So this dynamic can really only be overcome, and this is the Northwest COG and the Colorado Association of Ski Towns opinion, by strong leadership that requires finesse, vision, and community buy-in. And this young lady that just spoke, I think is exactly the kind of person we're looking to have in this community, along with everybody else that's more than welcome. But I think if I had to say anything, I'd say please endeavor to overcome these challenges, and this is a good first step. So thank you.
Thanks, Rick.
Have a good evening.
Anyone else care to address council? Public hearing. Any callers? Anybody would have to put their hand up if you're calling in if you want to address the council. Okay.
And then one other thing, I just wanted to enter into the record, the letters that were distributed to you since the packet and handed out at your individual table. And there was a letter from Virginia Loeffner that was made its way around the table. And I think, Pam, it's made its way back to you now, and just enter that into the record. So, thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. So with that, I will close the public hearing. Let the record show that public hearing is closed at 8:12 p.m. So, comments, questions, discussion by council. First of all, questions of the applicant or of staff. So, floor is open.
I can start. I'll start. So, on the height deal, we get what you guys did it, I guess, in a way, but I think I specifically said last time, don't knock down off the floor, you can only bring it down 4 foot. And that's exactly what we did. Parking, if you could fit 62 spaces in there with 70 units and it was workable, to me it seems like you should keep it that way. We all know it's an issue. I mean, you guys work right over here on a daily basis. I think we all see the intersection. We've got to work together and do what we can to mitigate it as best we can. I know, unfortunately, because you guys are developing the parcel right in the middle of town, it's probably unfair, but you're being tasked with solving a lot of problems that might not be yours. But that's just what that parcel is. So, I mean, it's unfortunate, but I think it's something we all got to look at. And then with the public improvements, you guys were really, really gung-ho about making those before, and now it seems like it's adequate. I'd encourage you to do everything you can to make that pedestrian-friendly corridor, design it the way you had it, follow through on it. It's gonna look really good.
Thanks, Lynn.
I have a question about the PIF. You brought up there's a PIF in Willits. I'm wondering where it is in Willits. I did some shopping today and I didn't see it on my receipt, so.
It's in about, well, it depends on where you're shopping. That
Well,
was
that's
put
what
in
I'm asking.
after about 2 years after Whole Foods was in place. So it
Okay.
doesn't apply to anything prior to that. It applies to the sales taxes that are rung up after that period of time.
So where is it? Well, it says.
Oh, well, you want me to name businesses?
Yeah, just
Yeah,
one.
Soak, Mezzaluna, Wiener Stube, just going around the block.
Okay.
But hold it, wouldn't
Bauer?
Cindy know if we have a PIF in town?
Apparently we do.
Well, and that's kind of the point, Ryan. It's
No, I
never
know.
been noticed.
I know. And it's,
Because it's 8.2% sales tax in that end of Eagle County inside Basalt. And at 9.2%, which is what it amounts to, with the 1%, it's not ever been an issue.
so
And
it's
it continues to go into new tenants that are going in, like Be Hippie, those others that are brand new are in
so
the,
anyone after Whole Foods, Four Dogs.
that's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's just interested in that and
And then also there'll be a PIF on the free range restaurant, any other retail in Basalt River Park.
in the new development.
Yeah.
And you were looking for that PIF because on this, it seemed like you were directing it to the improvements that you don't want to make now? Or is that just a general
Well,
developer
let's back
thing?
it up. Guys, there's been a financial hit here, and I'd appreciate everybody kind of being aware of that, at least loosely. We went from 70 units to 67 units. Earlier in one of our memos, we described that each unit is on the magnitude of $300,000 of value, right? That's in public record. It was part of the responses about what about this RETA paying out? So we went and did some research on that. That kind of number times 3 is a real number. Sales tax sharing was a significant number in our pro forma too. That's been wiped out. So in terms of what we can do and what we can accomplish, we're on thin ice. We can do it. You've got a reliable group here that you can believe in. But please don't act, I appreciate it, professionally, like there's not been an adjustment to our financials.
I didn't. I'm just asking a question about it. I'm trying to figure out.
As it relates to the public right-of-way area, that is on public record. FCI constructors came in with a cost estimate for $100-some thousand. That's a big number.
I'm not saying it's
I think
not.
it's worth our all gut checking to say, does it really need to happen? That value engineering exercise is part of any construction project, and maybe it applies sooner rather than later on that piece.
Ryan, I'd add that there's a lot of infrastructure. There's basalt sanitation infrastructure. There's pavement working there. That was all what the PIF was about. It wasn't just landscape work that we're saying we'd rather not pay for now. Does that make sense?
I understand.
Okay.
It's just a question, guys.
Okay.
You don't need to get defensive. Just a question.
No, I think the tone is that we've really tried to work within the zoning and bring something in that was very consistent with the zoning, and now we've gone beyond. So we're just trying to.
I appreciate
We want
you
that
guys
to be
listening.
appreciated, yeah.
This is a difficult process for everyone involved. We're all here together.
we are.
We're all trying to solve problems for Basalt.
Yeah.
So, I appreciate your answer. Thank you.
Sorry if I got testy.
No, it's all, I don't care. It's not, I'm just telling you.
We can disagree, but I don't want to be disagreeable.
I appreciate that. I would also like to, I appreciate the language that you guys included on the 60% local, but you guys are still leaving this giant gap of the other 40%, and it's all about language and all about how it's presented. And I know you're fitting into that 1 month rental still with 40, it leaves 40% of the units to be rented within the terms of Basalt's short-term rental language, right? And so that would be no less. It would still allow you to do 1 month rentals.
No.
Yeah, but, well, I think the reality is we have other apartment buildings, and we're not doing them in 1 month rentals. People living in these will be living in them for long periods of time.
Well, I understand.
And we
So
all
the-
know we have plenty of friends that have businesses that need people to live in units just like this.
I totally agree, but then once again, there's still the availability to rent one of these apartments for 1 month.
For more than 30 days.
Yes, 1 month, 2 month.
Right.
But
Yeah, and last meeting we did discuss that. I
Yeah.
realized it was on your mind, Ryan, And it's, you know, with our experiences with 110 Harris leasing that up and today also with Lumen, we've had 2 or 3 instances where somebody wants something less than a year, and it's usually some sort of hardship. So if it's your desire to have that 60% number go up, it's okay with us.
Okay.
And we'd kind of hope to maybe would catch more of what that goal would be, because, and again, it's an insignificant amount of rentals that happen on, you know, from 31 days to 6 months. And it usually involves furniture and move in, move out hassles, and it's just, you know, it's just not what we manage for.
We're in
So-
a different time now. You could fill a 1-bedroom studio apartment with some furnishing company like that. It's not, this isn't the, you could do short-term rentals now, and it would be appealing for you guys, and it'd be appealing for someone else. Someone would love to come live in downtown Basalt.
So like I said, we'd be happy to
Yeah,
increase
so
it, and that was the gesture we made last
I
time.
would say that 6 months is what you're shooting for. In almost, I mean, I would leave it at 90%. If you're saying that 2 of your other buildings have only had 1 to 3 short-term rentals or hardship rentals, then, you know, I think we could add that language, but I think we just leave it vague enough that it still leaves plenty of, you could rent that 2-bedroom for 1 month for a lot of money, and it just kind of goes against what, to me, the presentation is of employee housing, housing for Basalt workers.
So what you'd like to have is 90%
Yeah.
taking 12-month leases.
No, I think 6
Or
months
6
is fine. I think 6 months
Greater
is
than 6 months or greater.
Yeah, because you can have seasonal. I totally understand that. I just,
Yeah, well, like I said earlier, we're fine with
Okay.
that.
We don't see these being rented short-term, but I
No.
appreciate your concern.
Yeah, let me remind everybody that we're at sketch plan here.
Yeah.
And so we don't have to wrestle every one of these issues entirely to the ground. I think the point
This
is
one's
here,
okay, Bill.
for you to hear from council, and should we get through sketch plan, you should be informed about what the issues are on councilors' minds and those that you're gonna have to work on before we get to final, so.
Sure.
Okay.
and just one more. In some of your drawings, you leave this kind of brown line around the edges of the building that, to me, simulate other stories that aren't really there, like on the gas station, if you looked at the last page. It just, I don't know. When I see them, it just drives me insane, because I know those.
See what that is?
Yeah, if you go to the last page of the 23-page presentation. So the brown over the,
I think that's simulating
Basalt
the
Mountain.
backdrop mountain. That was what I took it as.
That's Basalt Mountain, right?
Yeah.
okay. Well, I'm not gonna fight about that. There's trees.
We're not fighting, we're discussing, remember?
Similarly, on the,
The other side, it's,
toward the frying pan, you'd
yeah, it's a mountain. Okay.
Star Hill.
Okay, additional comments, questions, guys? Bill?
Jerry's got one.
There we go.
No, go.
Well, thank you guys very much for a lot of hard work. I think the project that you've presented responds to the needs that have been expressed in numerous public comment and other fora in the master planning process. So thank you for that. Thank you for being responsive to what the citizens have said they wanted. They want affordable housing. I don't think there's a meeting that's gone by in 3 years when we haven't discussed affordable housing. So the fact that you're bringing 25% or 17 units is a step in the right direction. So thank you for that. We've also talked at length about vitality in the Midland core. I think that your project, in conjunction with River Park, will bring vitality to the retailers and commerce or businesses along Midland. So thanks for that too. I kind of wish that we could unshackle you from kind of the syndrome where you're trying to respond to so many different views and perspectives. Trying to design by committee of 4,000 Basalt residents can't be easy. So your patience is, again, much appreciated. I guess on the grocery store, since so many others have focused on the residential side, I'll ask about the business side, because that has been a principal concern of mine and interest of mine since joining town council. I have to wonder why we are discussing grocery store in what seems to be such a narrow way, with 70% being restricted to food that can be taken home. Admittedly, there is an addendum that says it can be taqueria or pizza or other things, but I think, Scott, if I'm correct, if that's your name, you had mentioned the Denver Central Market. Great example. I have no idea how they would ever measure how much, relatively speaking, was coming from the purchase of fruits and vegetables or meat versus the sale of pizza, prepared foods, sandwiches, or beverages. But I would hate to see us come up with a very restrictive definition that forfeited the opportunity to see that space become a destination for people from out of town, whether it's the fisher folk who are stopping by on their way to Rudai or the Frying Pan, or anyone else who may be coming here to enjoy the art and pick something up. So I hope when we conceive the definition, we are more liberal in tolerating what you will do, and we release this notion that we're going to recreate the Clark's Market that people remember from 15 and 20 years ago. That would be a tragedy. And as Andrea said earlier, we have Skips. We don't want to compete with Skips. There are 2 other markets down the street. We don't need to reinvent their franchises, which are doing very well. So I hope we can think creatively and more liberally about what you do. I'd like to ask town council or staff if we could have a work session on PIFs, because I have to say I am a little bit surprised that we have a PIF on a property that I was on town council for that I don't ever remember having discussed. And so if we have a PIF, I'd like to understand what it applies to, because I'm unfamiliar with it, having eaten at Capitol Creek and purchased stuff at Soak. But I also want to understand how a PIF functions for the public improvement function, and what the upsides and downsides are before we jump into this. Glenwood's had a PIF for a decade and it's not going away, and it raises the cost of commerce in Glenwood. I understand the problem that you're trying to solve, which is how to finance infrastructure construction, but I want to make sure that we're choosing the right tool for that task and explore any other option that might exist. So if we could have a work session on that sooner rather than later, certainly before we go to something final, I would appreciate it.
I think we need a little more explanation on it. Do you know?
Yeah, I mean, we can come back and have a more detailed discussion on PIFs in general. It's not something that is imposed by the town. It's a private covenant that mimics a sales tax that's paid to either to the developer district to offset costs of public improvements.
Right.
There's a number of ways to structure that with special districts and with a PIF, either as an add-on or working in conjunction with the municipal sales tax to do a reduction of a sales tax to kind of offset that difference. That requires more of a partnership in working with the developer as that moves forward. So I think at this stage, I know there's being proposed, or there's seeking at least an acknowledgement of the right to impose a PIF. But in any event, that's just kind of big overview and something we can come back to and discuss
But
more
what I'm
as we
hearing
move
is
towards
as long as we
final.
get a work session before this comes back at final.
Right.
So that we have a little better understanding of how
Because
these.
having done an awful lot of work with fiscal policy around the world, I understand the concept of PIF. I don't understand the trade-offs, and I don't understand the application in our town. And if I'm lost, I may be the only one, but I kind of doubt it. So having a work session to understand the mechanics and the implementation of a PIF would be really good before we agree to one or not.
Okay. Well said. Gary, were you next, or
Yeah,
David?
you wanna do it?
Okay.
So I appreciate all the modifications and the listening that have occurred. The massing in particular is a big improvement, so I appreciate that a lot. And all this, also the civility and the back and forth that we've had, and people actually coming up and say, hey, that looks better, and public comment. So thank you for continuing to kind of be engaged in that aspect. So one thing I just want to point out, you can probably wrestle with it more later in final if we get to that point, is the the 9 months, with after CO issuance deadline for the grocery store. My biggest concern is the optics of having an empty grocery store. I get the rationale, it makes sense, but the optics of an empty grocery store when we have, all the apartments built, people moving in, and I think that there will be potentially some negative optics. We just need to maybe look and see what we can do to improve upon that and set expectations otherwise, right? The other point I have is that as the town right-of-way improvements, I feel that right-of-way, and if I look at the diagram with the property lines, the way they go around, it looks like it's being used by, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but, it's parking spots so kind of all the way around that perimeter by the entire center there. So, that's a benefit that the town is giving to Basalt Center Circle essentially now and in the future. So for an ADA ramp and some of those improvements there, I don't think the town should pay for that, but I will, instead of just saying I don't agree with that, I will offer a suggestion. Perhaps the Basalt Center Circle should be paying for that since they will all be benefiting that. Maybe that's something that could be baked into a final if we get to that point and you guys come back. And then the last thing I'll say is around the parking. I think we got to have more substantive parking conversations later, for sure. Losing 6 tandem spots is still losing some parking. It's still going to be an issue. Aside from the physical parking, kind of having limited supply of that, the enforcement part seems a little loose still. I think we need to get that more fully baked later. And I think we probably need to talk about that town overall, because I forgot who said it. Somebody said, I think Bill, you said it, that you're being asked to deal with a problem that's, that's kind of broader than this property. And I think we need to probably have a broader conversation soon about parking in the town and how we're enforcing it, et cetera. Because that all plays into, I think, supply issues that they have now and you'll still have in the future if this site's developed. So, but thanks for bringing all this back. Appreciate the improvements.
Sure. Well, I do appreciate a lot of the changes, as people have said. I mean, I really do like this back and forth, and, it does get a little testy at times, but this is a big deal for the town of Basalt. When this changes, this is going to change a significant portion of downtown. So that's why I think, you're seeing a lot of residents kind of worried about the scale of this, because when we're doing a master plan, you kind of go, whoa, this is all great. Yeah, we need the big grocery store. Yeah, we could potentially do 3 stories or even 4. But when it comes down to the actual details of it, then people go, this is real. This is potentially, a game changer for the view line of downtown Basalt. So, I really appreciate the drop. I'm a little concerned, like Glenn is, that the height did not come down fully. I would really like to explore, the height came down significantly from 3 to 4, from 4 to 3 overall, but it still has these pop-ups and everything. I think we got to be, because one of the biggest concerns I had in the original was the mass of the building is a block. And yes, you're providing, I do agree with Dave that it is more of a modern Western architecture, but I like the breakup. I would love to see more. I mean, I don't know how we do it, but I think it would break up the fact that maybe some things go over 40 feet, is if some things went less than 39.6. And I know you're going to be like, whoa, we try to make the grocery store 14 feet. I think that's one of the biggest things we're going to have now, and especially at final, is that you're going to get the same comments of the mass of this building and how you break that up. So, I know in sketch plan, a lot of times you're just not going to put all the money that you're going to put into the actual full design. But I do really want to see a breakup of it, because you show downtown beautifully. Downtown has this break of architecture up. You have low buildings, high buildings, and low buildings and high buildings. And I just think that if you really want to match that here, that would be a huge benefit. And so, you know, that's really just a challenge, because I think getting there is going to take a lot of the heat that you're hearing from some residents, and as soon as it goes to final, you'll hear it more. So that's one thing I would love to see. And then in the second piece, the parking is going to be an issue no matter what. I think, you know, one of the biggest things we're going to have to deal with is if this bond passes and we start to look at downtown overall, is we got to figure out the parking overall, because there's a ton of employees that park downtown. There's going to be your residences that can park downtown. And how do we control that? How do we work with that? And how do we make the car less the focal point? Because one of the things I think we need more parking, but I hate parking in front of a plaza. You know, that the few parking spaces that you have in that plaza area there is really going to detract from how beautiful that area is. Because I was just in the Denver Central Market, and it's such a cool spot. But if you detract with it with cars sitting in front, I think that's going to be a major, detraction overall. And I think we've just got to be more creative with the parking. I think if there's ways to do the tandem parking, it's not great. I think that would be great to do it, because at least it provides your residents the way. Because if we start enforcing this stuff, I think your residents are going to need that extra space. They're not going to be able to park all over the place, because I think the HOA and you guys trying to enforce is going to be an interesting piece of the puzzle. One thing I did want to ask a question on is, you do have that area marked out for pedestrian access to downtown, and I saw the letter from Tempranillo, and I just want to know how you guys are going to, if I can ask them a question, I just want to know how you're going to deal with that, because the reality is if they don't give you that, we're just putting that as a potential future. So I don't know where you're at with that. I don't know where town is at with that. So who wants to answer that?
We're cooperative.
I would say we'll do what we can control,
Okay.
right? We can't control what someone else does with their own property, but we can make it available if they ever change their mind.
Could you also potentially work with Alpine Bank too, to figure out a way to do that? Because if they do a redevelopment, maybe that's the way through. So if it would just be better to be on the plan that it looks like that you're making, because I know it's easy to just say, yeah, sure, the public's accessible on our property, but a way to make sure that if anybody else comes in the future, we can do that.
We can provide that sidewalk area within our property boundaries, and we have. I think the other players are going to be the Basalt Center Circle Homeowner Association, Tempranillo, and Alpine Bank. And I mean, we see the advantages, certainly, in having
I think
pedestrian traffic go through there. But I think in the conditions of, and there's mention of how we'll be cooperative as much as we can be, but I think we'll need town to be involved.
Well, the town's certainly a player in this, and we want to do everything that kind of sets a positive thing in the future. I think Post was really looking for the developer before final to take a good leadership role in this, and looking at other connections too. They weren't just looking at that single one. So I think hopefully the developer's not just looking at the town to take the lead. I think it's kind of a partnership that I think we need some, and it might be just, setting ourselves up for success in the future, but I don't think it's just a town, it's your job to do this.
Okay, cool. And then I agree with Ryan's point, is that let's put a number on the percentage of short-term, because shorter than 6 months. I mean, 90 was great, but, I'd love to hear from you guys, why we couldn't do 100% and stuff like that, so of 6 months or longer, because I know that's a fear for people is, even though it's not a short-term rental, a month is still pretty short. 6 is pretty good, so I'm not necessarily you know, I like at least 90%, but why not higher if you guys are open to it? Or just let us know why, but I'd love that to go higher, because none of these I really would like to not have, you know, in the future, all of a sudden, 1 month rentals are popular in the town. That's a huge turnover of people. It's a different feel of it. So, and I don't know if that really affects your overall, you know, scheme of anything. So if you could just let us know more of that as we move on, because, you know, I think really setting this up for people who can be here seasonally or all year long will be a huge piece of the puzzle.
I think that could be added to conditions, to the willingness to look into that more, rather than try and solidify that tonight, here and now.
No, I figured
I think
that we're not gonna solve,
A
we're not
lean
gonna
ahead
solve
kind of
that issue
statement in the
right now.
conditions about that.
Right, well, because this is really just a step forward. I'd love, you know, I have reservations about this, and I'll be honest, you know, I'm concerned about even voting for it, because I'm really worried about what, you know, this mass will look like. But I'm more open to it if you guys are still willing to work on this as we get to final. And so, you know, that's the hardest part of, you know, the piece going forward. It's just like, you know, because I know that I've been in Basalt for 20 years now, and that's been that for 20 years. Clark's Market was, you know, it was nice to have a market downtown, but it wasn't a great place. And it's just not, I want to see it something. I was here on the master plan, I asked for density, you're given it, and so, you know, this is more of my just venting of, like, we're actually here talking about a piece of the major downtown piece of the puzzle. So, I'll stop and let you.
Yeah, is that, Gary?
I'm done.
Oh, go ahead, Bill.
Just want to chime in on Gary's latter point, however. Totally with Gary and Ryan, we want to discourage short-term rentals, encourage long-term rentals, but please keep whatever your solution is simple. I mean, to start talking about this percent, that percent, they're going to be 30 days or less, 60 days or more is going to be an absurd enforcement problem. And frankly, you guys probably don't have the time to go walk around through your apartment building to try to enforce this. So whatever you select, please just keep it simple, and bear in mind that our objective is to promote long-term residency of people who will contribute to our community.
I'm giggling because the two 60% numbers were meant to just kind of keep it simple.
Oh, okay.
But they were the wrong numbers. We'll keep it simple.
David?
Does it impact your pro forma? I mean, do you guys model that, like the mix of short-term, you know, that number?
No.
We don't have any short-term rentals in our other properties, so we don't, that's not playing into it.
Okay.
So,
No, it's an easy ask, it's an easy thing to resolve.
Okay, good.
That's simple. Thanks for asking that.
Any other comments, questions?
Did we have any asks that were way too hard?
Because if not, Glenn is going to come up with one.
Glenn. Well, I think I pounced on that earlier. The sales tax sharing was meant to be an easy, you know, assist. Meant to be, but wasn't perceived that way. The tandems will kind of suck for the people who get tandems, but I understand the balance, and we've struggled with the same thing. So we're hearing you on that to be further analyzed.
with regard to Gary's request of making the building more, that is in the other direction of efficiency. And so when you're increasing affordable housing and you're trying to, you're trying to make way with fewer units overall. So it's just that these guys are really good and they'll do their best, but that strikes me as something I'm trying to imagine how that'll work, but we'll figure it out. We'll figure something out.
We'll work on it. I think less than 39 feet probably means there's not a unit in there, right? So it affects that. But Scott's pretty talented. And I think we give you our word that we'll work on that.
I mean, I think that's the biggest thing. It's like, as long as we're all willing to have the conversation, work through it. Because the biggest thing is that, like he said, that's not gonna change for 50 years.
Yeah.
So there's definitely apprehension on my behalf of like making the wrong decision.
And that height, the height thing was a struggle on our part because we liked what we saw. The gables in a couple locations, the roofs popping up and down against that 39-foot plane were really helpful for that, establishing with posts and things, the Western architecture. But you're up above, 39 feet, 6 inches when you do that every time. And so we thought, we can further limit that architecturally, find that, maybe that sweet spot where there's less of it going on, but still we get the impact on it.
Well, and I think it's where it is. It's, because that rendering you did from downtown, you see those pop-ups. And so where you put that, because I think the rendering that drove me last time to say goodbye to the 4th floor was, when you're looking at this from downtown, that's the scary part, because, we have Gold Rivers over here. And so looking at from here is not the scary part, because you're higher and, I'm pointing the wrong way, but Gold Rivers over there. I mean, to me, that wasn't the scary part. It's there. And looking at it from here was more of that scary part. So figuring out a way to not mass it in that way so that that height doesn't just take over your view.
We do have to be cognizant too that there's a future, that the town will evolve. We saw the letter from the bank. They will be most hopefully building affordable housing and increasing the height of their project and the density on that parcel, which will affect the view of that as well. We've set the building considerably back because it's pushed to the south border line. So yeah, we will get the stairwell on those units that are facing this way. I think we can soften that a little bit more, hopefully, but we need to get the unit count there. The site constraints are very challenging to try to get this to work.
And I mean, on the note that there is a future, I think every one of us understands that, and knows that what we approve right here and now is probably gonna mean what people are gonna go for in the future. So that's why we wanna get it right.
Right, but we feel that we're in congruence with what's across the street already. There's already precedent for buildings of this mass and scale right there across the road. They're on the front of the street. We're actually set back a parking lot away and lower. So
This isn't,
yeah,
this
we
isn't the
understand it's
precedent,
new,
this
but-
isn't the precedent height. I mean,
Well, it's not from this,
Gold-
it's not from that side at all. That's not that is not the issue. It's really when you come around to Midland, how that works, because yes, Alpine Bank will probably add something. Just how would that work with it? So, if we held them to, 30, like 2 floors, because it's in the downtown corridor, it's just making sure that all mixes together in a way. And I really appreciate what you've done so far. It's made a huge difference, but it's not, to me, to get to the final piece, I just want to get a little more creative with how we do the gables and everything else, because I do believe that we're just, it's going to be difficult to, to really fit this all in together with downtown.
no, we agree, Gary. And to be honest, this is for
If you
sketch
figure out
plan. Well, I'm just saying in relative terms. For sketch plan, this project is showing definition and that things that aren't probably typical. The definition and detail, the materials, the height, the specificity that we're trying to bring that transparency. So, we're gonna keep working on it. It looks like it's in a good place and it's been developed, but really, we still have to get to final. We have a ways to go yet, so we're with you. We're still working on it. I mean, we redesigned it in 3 weeks. There's a lot of work to do still.
Okay, any additional comments, questions, council?
Just one other quick one, randomly. What would be the size of this liquor store compared to current Gonzo's, just for scaling?
Very, very similar.
They're about the same
And that's-
square
that's-
footage, just,
He just have something similar, yeah.
okay.
Okay, I would like to make a couple comments, so I'll wrap up quickly. I guess I would like to begin by saying I intend to vote in favor of this resolution number 38, and I think our citizens are entitled to know why their elected officials are voting the way they are. So just bear with me here for a minute. this is gonna sound a lot to planners like findings and determinations, but this is my thinking process. One is, this is precisely the application we asked for in our comprehensive plan. And if you didn't participate in the thousands of hours of citizen participation that were held all over the community for the last 3 years, I'm sorry, but this was the #1 featured property in the comp plan, and the vast majority of our citizens supported the idea of rezoning and creating inducements for attracting the opportunity for housing in town. So this application is completely consistent with our comp plan. Secondly, this is an urban infill project. So what we have here is urban blight. We have a derelict building that has been empty for 13 years. We've tried every which way to attract someone to apply some tender loving care to this site. And this is far and away the best thing that we have seen. We will create community housing due to a number of factors. One is the floor plan, the restrictions that will be coming on short-term rentals, and the pricing structure that we talked about last time is of concern if you apply a simple analysis of taking AMI and taking one income and trying to figure out what the AMI calculation is. But I work in a firm that has 45 employees that work in the valley. These are all young professionals. They're all two-income families, or if they're not two-income families, people go out and find a roommate. So the prices that are anticipated here, I think, from my perspective, would be that this housing will be leased up almost immediately in the current market conditions. So the market will really tell us how relevant the property is in terms of its cost effectiveness and its affordability. This is transit-oriented development. So this project is 150 feet from a raft to stop. There are very few sites in town that are more appropriate to accept density. I mean, I think it would be a great mistake and a great missed opportunity for our community to see urban developments occurring at the periphery of our community and then say no to applications that concentrate development that can be accomplished on a pedestrian basis in the core of the community, which is really what it's suited for. So, on one hand, we've created this zoning district to attract a developer, and it would be totally inappropriate to say that here's an application that completely complies with the zoning district that we've created, but we think it's too dense. I'm sorry, but that just is a hard kind of track of logic to follow. So, in terms of the mass of the building, we have a 5-story condominium building in town. And, I've lived in the valley 47 years. I've lived in Basalt for 13 years. I've never heard one complaint about this condominium project that's right there across the street. It's 5 stories, it's 55 feet high. And the reason there isn't a complaint, it's well disguised. It's against the mountain. It does not interfere with ridgeline development. This project is not either directly on Midland Avenue, it's not on Two Rivers Road. It is set back, and I think that the mass of the building will really not be a terrifically difficult issue for the community as it's built. So the site has been, again, as I mentioned, has been a black hole for a long time. The reason we've lost so much retail, and if you're here long enough to remember that we lost Basalt Bike and Ski, Bristlecone Sports, Midland Clothing, and we lost the heart and soul of our retail core moved to Willits. And they moved because there was no foot traffic. There's no life. There's no vitality. People have said, oh, there's a lot of vitality this summer. Man, there was things were bustling. Our sales tax numbers bear that out. But is that real sustainable vitality, or is that, people that were coming to town for dinners and seeking kind of the entertainment side of Basalt, or is that really sustainable community development? I would submit that we basically experienced a kind of a sugar high from the end of COVID, or what we thought was the end, but maybe not. So I think housing in our urban core will create a long-term sustainable economy for our downtown and hopefully bring attractive retailers back and create a sustainable long-term kind of economic base for the downtown. A grocery store will have great benefit in terms of trip reduction. So vehicle miles traveled and peak hourly volumes of traffic on Highway 82 seeking to go out to Whole Foods and Willits will undoubtedly be reduced by having a grocery option in town. So with that, I'd say my only concerns, and they're not only, but they're the same concerns that have been voiced by the rest of my counselors. One is, I think we want to, just bear this in mind and be working on this as you look forward to the final. I think this council's got to be reassured that there's going to be a grocery store there. This idea of kicking the can down the road and saying, hey, let's give us 9 months, and then we'll kind of, that sounds to me like an arrangement where a council will be sitting here 10 years from now saying, okay, the next item is extension number 27 for the, creation of a grocery store in downtown Basalt. That's, I think we got to solve this. And I think the language that's in the P&Z resolution looks pretty good to me, frankly. It just says that you don't get a CO until there's a grocery store. And we got to be convinced that there's going to be a grocer here. And so I would be inclined to stick with the language that's in the P&Z resolution. I think the comments that you've heard about short-term rentals are a serious concern. I think it would be a terrible mistake for our council to approve a project that permitted 30-day leases. I think that would almost assure that it's basically a short-term, flip project. So I'd really encourage you to think hard about how we lock that down and make sure that this is for community residents and it's a long-term deal and not a VRBO installation over there. So, they would be my concerns, and so that's, where sort of we all stand on this. And I don't know if council wants more time with this, whether we're ready to move forward and move this past the sketch plan stage. I think you guys have heard what all the issues are, what's before you, and I would encourage us to move on, but defer to my counselor pals here, see where we want to go.
Well, council, if I may, just trying to help, if there is to be a motion, tee up any motion with conditions. You have a proposed resolution in your packet. Based on the council discussion, the things that there are a couple of items that the development team has requested changes to, which James highlighted. From what I've heard council say, the things that they're looking at possibly amending from the proposed staff resolution are for an increase in the percentage of units for which there'd be a minimum lease term of at least 6 months. It sounds like there's some coalescing around the idea that the grocery store timing would not be changed, that it would remain the same as written in the draft resolution. Yeah. Same for the Two Rivers improvements, but perhaps leave the door open on that for the developer to come back at final with some more information as to the costs related to those Two Rivers improvements. For the developer to explore tandem parking as part of their final, and for the developer to explore any further reductions in height that might be possible based on the proposal. Those are the things that were on my list that I kind of heard some common.
What about the PIF? What about the PIF? I mean, that's just an acknowledgement, so like, we can't really change that.
Well,
right?
It's more of an acknowledgement of the right to impose a PIF. They're not necessarily seeking or express authority to impose a PIF, which, so I think for now would be, with respect to the PIF, to acknowledge it, but explore the details of what that might look like as part of final.
Yeah. Very good. Okay, what's council's pleasure here?
Sorry, I'm just looking through the actual recitals.
Yeah.
Be nice to have a whiteboard. And James, if you,
This is not Cisco.
let me know if I missed anything or development team. That was kind of my summary of the discussion that I heard, so.
No, I think some of the other items that were brought up are already actually covered with the conditions, like the pedestrian connections and working on those further. That's already in the resolution. Working on the definition of the grocery, you know, that's already in the resolution, so I think you hit the topic that came up.
So, yeah, are we looking, because I see parking lot access, landscape improvements, format indented.
I see
Town
a-
shape
yeah.
shall pay landscape site improvements, ongoing maintenance, town property.
Section 24.
Applicants shall not be required to make the improvements.
Right after that.
No, we actually say they're required to make the improvements. That's what the language says.
So Glenn, you're looking at the applicant's suggested
Okay.
changes.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm
The actual resolution, that's the draft starts on
Yeah.
page 35.
Yeah, but 38 is the sketch conditions.
Okay. There we go.
What condition number is that, James?
The condition about the right-of-way improvements is condition number 5.
Yeah, right here.
Okay,
He's got it.
got it.
So probably the inconsistency, the two inconsistencies between the discussion, 3 actually maybe. Inconsistencies, the discussion is 1, the number of residential parking spaces in the garage. And 2 would be just the number of short-term rentals, that's in condition number 12.
If we want to come up with a number right now, we're gonna, I mean, how do you want to do, because to me,
I think they were gonna bring it back.
you want to just bring it back at the next one and be clean, and so they know exactly what we're going to recommend? So we don't just magically change the numbers?
This is the ratio of short-term
It's the
rentals.
percentage
Well,
of
it's also
leases
the
that
number
could
of residential parking spaces at grade under,
Better off to get all this language like
Continue.
100%.
well, because honestly, because like, you know, we asked for the tandem spaces back, so do we go back to 62 parking
Yeah.
spaces?
Well, then that changes their drawings.
Yeah, it changes a
That takes out your
lot.
common space, and then there's,
Do we want to talk about, do you guys want to talk through staff on these things before we,
That's the biggest thing, is I don't wanna miss.
will we pop all this
Jeff,
stuff?
I'm not sure we want to be negotiating this here tonight.
No, there's, what I heard was, at least for the purposes of, at sketch plan, if there's further, rather than stating shall be tandem spaces, that the developer explore more tandem spaces within the garage. If it's the council's preference that based on these comments, that the development team further discuss with staff, you know, how to move this forward, and that we bring this back at our next town council meeting, that's certainly another procedural way to go about it.
That sounds like what we would be looking at, because tandem spaces are one example of the outstanding issues. Again, there are others as well that I think, again, we are not in a position to negotiate with you guys. It's got to be staff, so.
And I would just submit that I think I guess what I heard from folks with these comments was, we want further discussion, further investigation by the developer, and, you know, that seems well-suited to come back at a final.
Right.
You know, final's not gonna happen in one meeting, so I think they bring back their proposal after discussing with staff, and you all get to review that. If it's satisfactory, and meets, you know, what you think is appropriate for the site, then we'll have that opportunity, and then, you know, there's probably your chance to say, well, you didn't quite get it right yet, you know, come back, so.
And what if we did, okay, James, an asterisk, because we have a specific resolution we're passing, okay?
Well, that's on the table.
That's
but-
on the table for passing. Okay, so one way to not have to, I mean, the problem is, one suggestion is to put an asterisk by the number of parking spaces.
Which I think there's one.
What?
There is
There
one,
is an
but
asterisk there, but
But-
it says
but
this
just-
number of spaces may be adjusted as part of the final plan application if adjustments are needed to satisfy turning radius.
But
That doesn't necessarily specify that there's gonna be more.
yes, but it
than
does say.
Well, let me just explain what a suggestion is we put double asterisk, and we say we put an asterisk and put a footnote on the bottom of the page that this number isn't, that it needs to be refined before they bring back the plan for final. And that would be the language on the lease, the percentage of the leases, the number of parking spaces, and maybe, James, is there a good place where where we're talking about the articulation, maybe in the design piece?
I think you'd want to add a condition on that basically says the applicant would come back at the final plan review after having studied adjustments in the height to better articulate the massing.
What's everybody's pleasure? Is it a continuance?
I mean, that sketch plan, it's totally fair game to approve a resolution subject to comments and concerns and all material representations made by the town council in addition to the conditions that are outlined in Exhibit B. I mean,
Mayor, I move the town council continue resolution number 38, series of 2021 to our next meeting.
so.
Second.
You want to, hold on a second, Bill.
Yeah, I want to continue it, and I want this all in writing, because we're leaving asterisks, this is, I don't want to drag it out for you guys, but I want us all to be on the same page, because this is downtown, this is it, it's right there, it's huge. We gotta get it right.
I appreciate too that we don't leave too many unknowns going into final, because our next step is pretty significant.
Right.
And so if we can pin down some of these things that we're agreeable to, but we just haven't pinned them down yet,
Right.
you know. I don't think we can get to something like architecture being precise. I think that's one that we're not even talking about, but I use that as an example of that one we'll have to take it to final. But some of these just data points that we're talking about, I'm comfortable with that. I hope you are. Because then I think what we'll end up with is final that will really have clarity. And that's what I really hope comes out of sketch plan, is a strong definition of what we then need to deliver when we show back up at final. And it gives us some time to work things through with the staff, I think.
Well, there is a motion in a second.
So just to clarify the motion to continue the public hearing and resolution number 38 to November 9th, is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
So at which we would have a clean
Hopefully we'd have it
resolution
sorted.
or draft resolution for 38. Do we continue the public hearing, or can we conclude the
Yeah.
public hearing and bring this back for final review on the
I would
resolution?
suggest continuing the public hearing and
Continue the public hearing?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's been moved and seconded. I think this should be a roll call vote here tonight, unless you advise otherwise, Mr.
I think that's fine.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to continue the public hearing for resolution number 38 until the November 9 meeting of 2021. So, Pam, please call the roll.
Absolutely. Let's begin with Gary Tenenbaum,
Yes.
David Knight,
Yes.
Glenn Drummond,
Yes.
Bill Kane,
Yes.
Ryan Slack,
Yes.
and Bill Infante.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Okay, that concludes our business on resolution number 38. Thank you, everybody, and excellent work. Yeah, I really appreciate the drawings. A lot of work, and good job.
It's good work.
Oh, yeah,
And Mayor,
But the-
Yes, ma'am.
Dave Hodgkin has raised his hand again. I know.
I think he had his,
Public
he's had his comments from the public hearings. I closed the public hearing at 8.
Someone wants to clarify.
Yeah, 8:10.
Public hearing has been closed.
Well, if it's all the same to everyone else, I have no problem coming back with a clean resolution.
I think it's actually better, because it's like, the public is really messy.
But now that I'm on
I think it was better.
Welcome.
I can't believe you guys haven't made a decision yet.
So are you able to watch?
I didn't watch the whole thing, I did some work.
I didn't realize that building across the street was 5 stories.
It's because it's tucked against the hills.
Yeah, no, it is well designed. Nope, not yet. We have one more item on the agenda.
I was gonna come back, Elise.
You what?
I was gonna come back.
She was ready and raring.
Yeah,
Come on, guys.
It's not there.
I was just decompressing a little bit.
It's not
there? So it's just the newer ones?
Sure.
I mean, he made it sound like he has the right to.
And we have 2 more things going.
Okay, so, we have some more business to tend to here.
Opioid settlement.
We didn't know that he did it on the other ones.
Okay,
Well, we did over here.
The lawyer's in here and he's presenting. so-
penultimate issue?
On that one you did, but not.
We all ready to go back to work here?
We need the lawyer, he's presenting.
Oh, we gotta go to the bathroom too.
No, we still have one more issue, but we still need Jeff.
Okay.
Yeah, I know.
Okay,
Who do we need?
we're back on.
Oh, Jeff.
You went to the bathroom.
We're back on. We're on item,
Drank way too many of these things.
it was a hot one. So we're on item 7C, resolution of Town Council of Basalt, Colorado approving the National Opioid Settlement Agreement. Jeff's not here, unfortunately.
Went to the bathroom.
Okay, so we are waiting.
Let me just make sure he doesn't.
Did
get
everybody
way-
read every page of those documents? That was
Absolutely, absolutely.
I saw that we're getting 12
impressive
grand.
bunch of stuff, man. I just like,
I probably read that like 5 times.
Can you imagine how many attorneys were involved in that?
wow,
Mm-hmm.
wow,
The bill for that.
crazy. For $12,000. Man, oh man. Yeah, you can
You
see
think
these.
about it, like a town of Basalt gets 12,
Yeah,
Eagle County gets 350. It's a national
yeah.
opioid settlement.
400 million for the state.
Amazing. Well, it's
Hopefully
really
we don't
sad.
have to go
How
through
many
that
people's
entire
lives.
presentation.
So Jeff, we're on to the
you're not
opioid
going through every
settlement
single
agreement,
thing.
and we're all,
We all read it.
we're all very pleased to say we all read every page of the National Settlement Agreement. We're very pleased that was in the packet.
Yeah,
150 pages or whatever it was.
well, I'll just tee this up
You could
briefly.
read Moby Dick faster than you could read that.
I hope you,
War and Peace.
that's why I wrote the 1-page memo. As you may have heard and read, states sued, many of the states in our country sued the several pharmaceutical companies over the production of certain opioid-based drugs that have resulted in addiction problems and other problems in the communities around the country. And there's proposed settlements of those lawsuits, and on a national level, in the state of Colorado is proposed to receive about $400 million from those settlements to ensure, and that there's a formula for how that money would then be dispersed into the communities and for the purposes for which it could be spent. And it's for the benefit of all of cities, towns, and counties within the state. So to ensure that the state receives that full settlement amount, there's a requirement that 95% of the communities that might receive the money approve the settlement agreement. Now, there's a formula within those settlement documents as to like what amount is allocated to the town, or for which the town could receive. And the town's share is $12,602. Now, Eagle County's is $300,000, and our region is about $5 million, which is Garfield, Eagle, Pitkin Summit, and Lake counties. And the formula is one that I frankly didn't get too deep into, but it was based on the severity of the opioid epidemic in that area. So this money might eventually flow through the town or be later assigned to a more regional council where it might be more effectively spent and distributed. But it's important for the town to approve this settlement agreements to ensure that the state gets this money so that it can then be spent for these good purposes. So this resolution approves the necessary settlement documents on behalf of the town.
Is that $12,000 over 18 years, or is it $12,000 each year for 18 years?
Total.
Yeah. But it's paid out over 18 years.
Right.
So it's a real,
But
real
Or
hassle.
the regional impact.
But again, it's the 400 number we're
Can we
most
bond
interested in.
for it?
Mayor, I move that town council approve resolution number 46, series 2021 as presented.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, resolution number 46 is passed. Next item is executive session, so.
Mayor,
Yes.
I move that the town council enter executive session for a conference with the town attorney for the purpose of receiving legal advice on specific legal questions under CRS 24-6-4024B, more specifically to address the impact of Nieto versus Clark's Market, 488, page 3D, 1140, Colorado 2021, on the town's employee vacation time policy in the town employee handbook.
Would you
Second.
repeat that?
Screw you.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, we are in executive session, so
Okay, give us a
all,
moment.
all
Said everything.